And good morning to the members of the public joining us now. If you would like to participate in the public forum today, please raise your hand. You can find the raise hand icon in the participants box, which is in the bottom right-hand corner of the WebEx window. If you're joining us by phone only, you can raise your hand by dialing *3 on your keypad. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. This is Bruce Warren, the president of the TriMet board. I think we're waiting for Keith and Ozzy, it looks like still, if I'm looking at the participant list correctly. And Kimberly, we understand those two board members will be here today.
Yes, that is correct. I'm reaching out to them now.
Okay, thank you. And Jeff, I'm seeing about 10 folks so far signed up who want to participate in the public forum. Is that about correct?
I have 8 at the moment.
Okay, thank you. We'll give Director Edwards a couple more moments to get on here. If we don't hear from him soon, we'll start the public forum. All right, well, in interest of time, I think we ought to begin the public forum. So what I'm going to do is first off, welcome everybody. Again, this is Bruce Warner, the president of the TriMet Board of Directors. I want to welcome you to the regular meeting of the TriMet Board of Directors, our regular business meeting and a briefing which will follow the formal agenda. As usual, the first part of our the day's meeting involves a public forum where we allow 45 minutes for folks to discuss with us issues on the board agenda for the day or any other issues of concern about TriMet. And often we hear things that aren't of concern or are under the responsibility of TriMet. If we know those, we'll try to help you get to the right person. There's, as you had said, as you probably heard, there's a little less than 10 folks who've signed up. So that means what I'd like to do is try to limit the testimony from those who want to present today to 3 minutes. I will point out also that the board has received 11 letters in our packet from folks who wanted to participate and provided us written materials instead. Most of them were from labor union organizations who were asking TriMet to consider keeping the apprenticeship program as is, and then to continue to provide critical paratransit services during a pandemic. And for anybody watching, I just want you to know that we are awaiting a very important decision on the apprenticeship program from the Employee Relations Board. And the other one I want to make sure everybody understands, the paratransit program is working and is up and running. And it's just that the demand is a lot less than it has been. And so I think the concern is about the workers that aren't needed because of the reduced demand on paratransit. And I'm sure we will probably hear more about that today. So with that, Jeff, would you want to let our first member who wants to participate on?
Yes, I will go to our first person, and I just want to give a final reminder to those who have just hopped in. If you want to participate, please click the raise hand icon in the participants window next to your name. All right, so the first person up is Bill Bradley. Bill, can you test your mic?
Yes. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Okay. President Warner, members of the board, General Manager Kelsey, soon to be interim General Manager Sam Basu, congratulations. Assembled TriMet staff and members of the listening public, my name is Bill Bradley, and I am an Executive Board Officer with ATU 757. I've come before you today to reiterate the testimony that you heard last month. By now, you should have received about a dozen letters in support of the apprenticeship programs and our paratransit members. From community groups like Opal PDX, various trade unions, the International Association of Firefighters, and even the Oregon AFL-CIO. I hope you took the time to read these letters because these groups represent hundreds of thousands of Oregonians. These folks are extremely concerned with the behavior of TriMet as it relates to the bargaining and your treatment of the frontline workforce. In a letter dated December 8th, 2020, TriMet General Manager Doug Kelsey wrote to the Oregon Vaccine Advisory Committee, advocating for vaccine priority for TriMet's workforce. In that letter, Kelsey used the slogan, "Heroes moving heroes," which is 100% true. Transit agencies across the region have said the same thing about their workers, but the difference in those agencies, they have demonstrated that appreciation through concrete action. Many have paid their workers either a premium pay, lump sum, bonus payments for their heroism. Many agencies have extended contracts with wage increases and no takeaways. In many circumstances, transit agencies and our union have used the pandemic to galvanize our cooperation and utilize our collective passion for the service that we provide to start charting the recovery. TriMet's go-it-alone strategy is foolish. TriMet not only will work with the union, which is a natural partner that wants to see the regional transit system succeed, but it appears TriMet's failing at being a regional partner. Comments coming out of the Portland City Hall question the very existence of TriMet, accuses TriMet of lacking transparency, and identifies that TriMet sees itself as unaccountable to regional partners. This board's job is to create policy and oversee the general manager's performance. Over the past decade, TriMet's management team has not only alienated its workforce, but key regional partners. That failure sits on the shoulders of this body. I relate an example of TriMet's continued failure to support its workforce. The most recent winter weather, a once-in-a-decade event, caused havoc on the streets in the region that Portland, for the first time in the modern era, has shut down service. Workers, fearing for their job, wanting to retain clean work records, left their family with no power and no heat, braved unsafe roads to report to work because they knew TriMet is unforgiving. Some workers are still without power. Workers risked life and limb because they understood TriMet's management style is based on a punitive reflex. When the head of TriMet's vaccine committee, a staff person from the legal department, came to meet with our members, she had to hear their desperation. Our members asked her if she could talk to TriMet management, asked them to be forgiving. Sad. TriMet has created a culture of fear. This formula needs a revamp. ATU's hope is that this can be turned around. These workers have reported through a once-in-a-century health pandemic, devastating wildfires and smoke, and a winter storm. They are heroes and deserve more than the zeros and takeaway that constitute TriMet's bargaining proposals. This board will have an outsized impact on whether that can happen through the policies you create, the guidance you give, and the person you hire to lead this organization. ATU will continue to extend our offer to work together, the same offer we extend to the 28 other employers that we have relationships with. Relationships that are built on mutual trust of serving our communities and treating our workforce with respect. truly up to TriMet to want that partnership, because ATU 757 has demonstrated many times over that we are up to that challenge. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Bradley. I appreciate it. Jeff, would you like to go to the next speaker, please?
All right, yes, next up is Doug Allen. Doug?
Oh, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes. Hold on.
President Warner and directors, it's probably too late to stop the ill-considered Red Line project, but here's my final pitch. The additional light rail vehicles and the double track out to the airport are fine. The rest is a poorly designed waste of money. It fails any test of equity. It doesn't serve the Hillsborough Transit Center, which provides bus connections to Cornelius and Forest Grove. It blocks out the potential to increase service on the blue and green lines east and south of Gateway. It degrades airport connections to all the other bus and rail lines serving Gateway. It is a dog in the manger project that will delay conversion of Gateway to a hospitable transit-oriented development, perpetuating the current wind-blown wasteland. Your staff already know better ways to solve the operational problems on the Red Line. These solutions can also save money and improve service. You should ask for the federal grant to be repurposed. It's not too late to stop the fiasco in Hollywood. TriMet should not throw the riders out of the Hollywood Transit Center in favor of a poorly conceived development that squanders the true potential of this site for a quality transit-oriented development. The proposed design is the result of a federal program that subsidizes low-income housing by selling tax credits at a discount to rich people. These credits are available only in certain areas where development costs are high, so that affordable housing isn't all concentrated in areas with low property values, which of course is a laudable purpose. In a bizarre quirk that TriMet should challenge, the zip code boundary that defines the limits of tax credit availability makes a loop that excludes the central part of the transit center. TriMet claims that this quirk prevents a large central development that would allow a perimeter bus ramp, a design that would eliminate the tall steps and ramp up to the level of the bridge that provides access to the MAX station. That would vastly improve connections for all passengers. Instead, starting this fall, buses will be kicked out of the transit center and passengers will need to walk to Halsey or even across Halsey and wait on a narrow sidewalk on a busy street. The zip code boundary is in fact a fossil remnant of the former freeway off-ramp that was relocated when the transit center was built back in 1986. Come on, TriMet. This site has been ignored for 35 years, and now TriMet plans to just give it away without even a design competition, producing a relatively small building on top of a parking garage. If you want to do some transit-oriented development, how about the wasted space at the 11th Avenue Max turnaround, or the vacant lot on Southeast 76th and Division, right on the new BRT line? It's for sale right now. Put your riders first, please. You can do better. Look at how Vancouver, BC builds transit-oriented development. Speaking of which, I hope the board remembers General Manager Kelsey's desire for a truly aspirational transit system with high ridership goals, even beyond what we have seen in Vancouver, BC. That is a legacy worth remembering, and I thank Doug Kelsey for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Doug. And we are going to be getting briefings on this project on a regular basis. So thank you. Would you like to have the next speaker, please?
Yes, next up is Jan Campbell. Jan, you are unmuted.
Thank you, Board President and Board
Good morning, Jan.
Transportation. Kat wants to send, thank you, wants to send our best wishes to you, Mr. Kelsey, in your retirement. I remember when I was on the interview panel for your first position at TriMet, and you said you would make all the CAT business meetings you could. And if I remember, you kept to your word. As general manager, it made it much more difficult, but you came at least several times a year to bring us up to date on projects within TriMet and how you would like CAT to be involved. We have also talked with you about how to work towards TriMet being the first fully accessible transit in the United States, and that shows that you value older adults and persons with disabilities. We did not always agree with your recommendations to the board, such as less bus stops and MAX stops in the downtown area, but again, you were always willing to listen. Thank you for appointing older adults and persons with disabilities to subcommittees and ad hoc committees within TriMet so our voices are heard and part of the decision-making process. I can assure you that CAT will continue in their strong advocacy and continue to push forward in working with TriMet to make it truly accessible, safe, and welcoming to everyone. And thank you for your leadership in pushing forwards towards that dream. So in the near future, hopefully it will become reality. And oh yes, from me, my friend, don't forget to have fun and do enjoy some good fishing. Thank you, and the best to you and your family.
Thank you, Jan. And on behalf of the board, I want to thank you, I guess, for all the citizens of the region too. Thank you for your service on the CAT committee. It is greatly appreciated. I don't think people realize how many hours you probably put in every month helping us on that. So again, thanks. Jeff, you want to go with the next speaker, please?
All right, next up is Tristan Isaac. Tristan, I have unmuted your mic.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Yeah.
Awesome. My name is Tristan. I'm here with Bus Riders Unite. To start, I'd like to say that Bus Riders Unite stands in solidarity with the workers of Amalgamated Transit Union 757 in their fight for a fair contract. I'm here this morning to testify on the resolution authorizing additional transit police contracts. So in 2017, police responded to a disturbance at the Interstate Rose Quarter Transit Center and made contact with a man who had been hurling racist insults at other passengers and operators, and also assaulted a woman by throwing a bottle at her. Police briefly questioned this man, but then decided to let him go. That man was Jeremy Christian, and the next day he went on to murder 2 people and wound a third after a racist tirade against 2 young women of color on a TriMet Max train. Later that same year, officers from the Transit Police Division responded to a disturbance at the Southeast Favell Street Max station, where they pursued and executed a person who was running away from them. Several months later, transit police were involved in an unconstitutional detainment of Ana Del Rocio over the mere over the fact that she had simply left her fare card at home and inadvertently used a familial name that was slightly different from the one that she presented on her identification card. She was arrested and detained for many hours, keeping her away from her job and her family. This event also led to a court decision ruling that TriMet fair enforcement by police was unconstitutional, which was followed up this year by an appeals court decision that came to the same conclusion. Where I'm trying to go with this is that TriMet police don't keep us safe. They didn't protect us from Jeremy Christian. They certainly didn't protect Terrell Johnson, the person they shot in the back as they were running away. And now they don't even serve to make TriMet any money by enforcing fare and policing the system against houseless folks and other poor or cost-burdened people. My request to you is that you do not approve the resolution authorizing additional transit police contracts to the cost of $98 million over the next 7 or so years. As I said, please don't keep us safe. They don't belong on transit, and they don't need to be enforcing fare. In fact, the system should be free. So you need to decline to approve these contracts, abolish transit police, and make way for a system that is truly free and accessible to all people, fare-free and free from police. Thank you.
Thank you, Tristan. I appreciate your comments this morning. Jeff, next speaker, please.
All right, next up we're going to Vlad P. Vlad, your mic is live.
Oh, thank you for your time, everybody.
Good morning.
So here we go. We're going from the McFarlane regime to the Kelsey regime on to the next lovely GM. As we've heard from other speakers, TriMet doesn't seem to respect its employees and nor its riders. When we have a fragile system where a slight breeze can take a plastic bag and cause a 25-minute delay on the yellow line, while contractors get rich, the board solidifies itself as soon-to-be consultants when their terms are done. The riders get the raw end of the deal. This has also been known in these meetings themselves. C-Tran holds them at 6 p.m. They notify their riders we're having a meeting, not 9 a.m. on a Wednesday. They announce it on social media. TriMet last month dusted off a 10-year-old non-verified Twitter account called TriMet News to post this with all 54 followers. Oh wait, 58 as of today. Why not announce these meetings on the verified account that has 64,500 followers? Because TriMet likes to operate in secrecy. So maybe it's time to flip the script. Maybe the orange and blue New Deal. In the hunt for the next general manager, let's get back to what's really important. People, riders. I do want to thank Ozzy. He swims in the cesspool known as Twitter. He banters back and forth. He may not answer questions about policy, but at least we have his ear and know he's listening. And I suggest that the other directors support their region, maybe get on a little social media and listen to people who can't attend these meetings and don't have time to write or call. With that, I appreciate your time and look forward to seeing the candidates for the next general manager position.
Thank you, Vlad. Appreciate your comments. They're good comments too. Thanks.
Okay, next up is Lee H. Lee, go ahead.
Good morning. Can you hear me all right?
We can.
Awesome. My name is Lee Halphins. I'm the organizing director for Opal, and I'm also with Bus Riders Unite. I use they, them pronouns. And I first want to echo the points made by ATU. Our communities value the essential work and role that these employees play, and we will continue to elevate their demands. Additionally, if what we are seeing is an increase in funding for policing, then it is a horrible display of public leadership in light of the George Floyd BLM uprisings that took place last year and continue to this day. I've spoken several times to advocate against policing and to move these resources towards actually reimagining public safety. We know that investing resources in policing is not only not reimagining public safety, but as an agency and community leaders, you are reinforcing the most violent institutions that exist in our society, which are built directly out of slavery, built out of a system that keeps especially Black and Indigenous people oppressed, and so many other communities, which you are all undoubtedly aware of. The fact that there has been no real change in the institution of policing on transit during your roles as directors speaks to the lack of leadership in this area, and any vote in favor of policing resources is a direct investment in a white supremacist legacy that the United States is built on and which we all suffer from. I urge you to delay this vote on the transit policing resolution, or at the very least cap the increase until the 2 potential director appointees are confirmed and brought on. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Lee. Next up is Gabriela Saldana. Gabriela, go ahead.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good morning, TriMet Board of Directors. My name is Gabriela Saldana Lopez, and I'm with Bus Riders Unite. And Bus Riders Unite is in solidarity with ATU 757 in their fight for a fair contract. I'm here today to ask you to reject resolution number 210207 on transit police services. Last fall, TriMet engaged in the reimagining safety process, where a total of $1.8 million was set to be invested into alternative solutions. Although there were many flaws to this process, including a heavy emphasis on policing and establishing or keeping a police force, it was a step forward in the right direction. This resolution is taking us back 2 steps back. And this resolution makes it clear to me and to many community members that the $1.8 million reinvestment is not a genuine effort to reduce police funding and reinvesting instead towards community-based solutions. This resolution says that TriMet is making a long-term commitment to increasing police funding. And I ask, why is TriMet increasing money for these contracts instead of the previous 5 years to the now proposed 7 years in a time with such leadership instability where there are 2 empty board seats and a general manager that is basically on his last week of the job? Finally, I ask, why is TriMet choosing to increase their funding for policing and at the same time cutting essential jobs and economic opportunities through the ATU 757 apprenticeship program? I urge you to vote no, to reject this resolution and reevaluate your commitment to long-term community-centered solutions that does not include police. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, last up is Jim Howell. Jim, go ahead.
Can I share my screen?
I did, Jeff. I don't know whether that's available.
Members coming in from the public are placed in a tier that only allows audio.
Sorry. So the answer is no, Jim. Sorry.
Well, it makes it a little difficult. I wanted to cover issues that you're going to hear about next month on the service changes, and there's some serious problems with this service changes. One of them has already been mentioned about the Hollywood Transit Center, but also the rerouting of the 77 bus through Hollywood is going to severely affect ridership in the area. It eliminates some of the heaviest used bus stops in the Hollywood district and moves them out onto Halsey Street, where there's everyone getting onto the bus there has to cross Halsey Street, a 5-lane heavily used street. I had slides on these, which makes that I was planning to refer to, so I don't have that opportunity. There's around 4 other issues on the so-called improvements that have to be that should be addressed. The number 19 bus, the proposal is to drop the Rex Loop and that would which has 4 times the ridership of the piece that they want to keep. Doesn't make much sense. There's also an attempt to try to improve service out to Rivergate, but in fact, the proposal that we've seen so far, actually, it will make it worse. And here again, I had slides to show how that will occur. It's going to remove any service from Bridgeton area, which now has poor service, but at least it has service. Any after this project is proposed. And the 15 bus, they're going to drop the the leg that goes up the hill and turns around. What is it? Not Devon, but I forget the name of the street right now. But that will be reduced to 4 trips a day, which is really an excuse for. And once you get down to 4 trips a day, you carry a few passengers, and then the next thing you do is you eliminate it. So it's basically elimination of a line that's been there for 40 years. So I'm sorry, this is rambling. I don't have.
No, Jim, can you please send us that material electronically? We'll make sure that the full board has this. I think this is related to the changes that are probably going to be discussed later on our agenda day that will take effect next month. So it's pretty important for us to see that. If you could send that to us, that would be greatly appreciated. And because I think you usually do a great job of analyzing what we can and can't do. So I'd love to see what you put together.
I'd be glad to send it to you. Thank you.
I'm sorry, technology is not working to our benefit here this morning.
Okay.
Thanks, Jim.
Mhm.
So Jeff, is there any other individuals wishing to testify this morning?
No, that was the last raised hand.
Okay, with that, I'm going to close the public forum. And we will move on then to our regular agenda today, which is a fairly full agenda. So with that, I'm going to call to order the TriMet Board of Directors meeting of February 24th, 2021. And I see up on the screen now is the actual board agendas. And the first item on the agenda is board reports. And so I'd like to call on Director Irish Bauman to give us a report on the Committee on Accessible Transportation. Are you ready?
I am ready. Good morning, everyone.
Good
The
morning.
CAT is now meeting monthly, as you know, and held its meeting last week on February 17th. Here's a very quick report, and thank you for this staff helping out on this report. I was not able to attend all of the meeting due to the snow and ice. The committee first heard a report on some of the challenges that were associated with last week's snow and ice storm. And in particular, they gave a shout out to a manager at Broadway Cab who really went out of his way to help a Lyft dispatcher who needed to obtain some medication during the worst of the storm. There were two staff reports. One was an update on safety and security efforts on the system, and one was on the planned development at the Hollywood Transit Center, the transit-oriented development that the board's familiar with. The last item I'll mention is that we've scheduled a special meeting of the CAT in March to obtain CAT members' input on the general manager search, and I will plan to attend that meeting. And that is the report.
Good report. Is there any questions or comments for Director Bauman on the report on the Committee on Accessible Transportation? I'm seeing no hands raised. Thank you very much for that report. Let's go on then to the Finance and Audit Committee. Director Simmons.
Yes, thank you. We met prior to the board meeting today, and we heard from two different areas. One was an update on the current financial situation and a review of what the CARES 2 Act would provide to the agency. Then we also had an update on labor negotiations, and we also received a report on how the agency is addressing cybersecurity. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Bauman, do you have anything else you wanted to add on the committee report this morning?
No, nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, I have nothing to add either. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to the Transit Equity Advisory Committee, or as we know it as TEAC. Director Gonzalez.
Thank you very much, President Warner. The Transit Equity Advisory Committee met on February 9th. I believe that was more than 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago already. Time flies. And we had, again, a packed agenda. The agenda included a presentation about the updates to the business plan by our staff member, Alan Leto. We covered an update on the CAT committee. It was great to have Chris Hunter from the committee there to update on CAT's activities. There was a presentation on the Red Line expansion project and some discussion amongst the committee about that. So that was a great update to have. We also had some updates, some general comments were made about from PBOT. PBOT's become a regular participant with TEAC, so we're happy to have that connection, and PBOT was able to provide some general updates during our time on some of their activities with what they're doing in active transport. And we also got I was able to share a little bit of an update with TIAC on the general manager search, which I'm sure we'll be sharing, we'll be discussing a little bit here today. So that was it. I don't have a date for our next TIAC meeting right now, but I know that we are still on a schedule for something in March.
Thank you, Director Gonzalez. Are there any questions, comments for Director Gonzalez? I'm not seeing any. Let's move on then to the general manager.
Sorry, I didn't get my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Director Edwards.
Thank you. Yeah, I didn't get an invite to the last TIAC meeting, and I had requested that. So if there's going to be another TIAC meeting, then I certainly want to make sure that I'm made aware of it in a timely fashion so I can attend. That's all.
Thank you, Director Edwards. I'm sorry about that. I do recall the comment, and I'm not sure what happened in the chain of custody to get the invitation out. I will connect with the director of the group directly to make sure. So I believe something was sent out, but I'm not sure what got lost in translation. So I'll look into that. And I do have information now. It is March 9th that the next TIAC meeting will be. So for the public and for you, Director, please hold your calendar. We usually meet at 4:30, and it'll be March 9th.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question and the response. All right, now let's move on to the General Manager Search Committee. An update from Director Lori Irish-Bauman.
Yes. Hello, everybody. Again, everybody. The General Manager Search Committee, as the board members know, is me and Director Gonzalez and Director Simmons. We're very pleased to have retained the search firm Krauthamer and Associates, also known as K&A. K&A has extensive experience in conducting searches for transit executives, and they also have a wonderful track record in recruiting diverse candidates. So we're really pleased to have them on board to support us. We also have very strong support from TriMet staff as we're going forward. We've adopted a plan that includes community outreach before we begin recruitment. And I'm going to turn it over to JC Venata and ask him to present the timeline and the outreach plan.
Thank you, Director Bowman. Can you, I just want to make sure that PowerPoints are always so tricky. Do you see the full screen?
I can see it, JC.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So Director Bowman, thank you for that. President Warner, members of the board, I wanted to go over kind of a high level review of our engagement plan for the general manager search. You'll see there are a lot of pieces and I'm trying to keep it high level and move quickly. So if you do have questions, please let me know, and I can potentially also share more offline should you need to. We are first, let's see. Oh, hang on a second. You guys are seeing, oops, my bad. And someone said you could see the presenter slide. Here we go. There you go.
There you go.
Perfect. Sorry about that. So we started off with an objective. We want to have meaningful input from the community around the general manager's search.
I'm sorry, JC, but I've got two gray squares on my screen and I can't see. There we go. There's one of them's gone.
So you should. This is just crazy. Sorry.
Yeah, I've still got one square on my screen that's blocking out some of the.
JC, do you have any windows open?
There we go.
The slides?
I'm good now. I can see the whole thing. Thank you.
You can go with that version if you want there, JC. We can read it.
Well, here I will. Okay, I can do that if you want. So we started with, here, let me back up on my apologies. We want to increase awareness around that we are hiring for a new general manager, and we also want to impress upon folks the role they play in TriMet's future. We also want to solicit a lot of feedback in meaningful ways. And we also want to report back those themes and report what we've heard to the board. There are three elements. They have to do with our community, stakeholders, and employees. And I'll first start with our community. We really want to do a lot in directly reaching out to community groups to inform them about the process, answer questions, invite them to participate through a survey and listening sessions. And I'll talk about those pieces later, but we really want to involve all of our community groups from all of them on our list that you can think of. We want to work with multilingual agencies to get them and to hear from ESL communities. We want to look at having facilitated discussions. Again, having interaction with folks where they're at. We will be asking organizations to promote our outreach efforts and sometimes through paid opportunities. We also want to make our staff available to our partners, to community organizations, to talk through the process, ask questions, get feedback. And we also want to go to communities, to agencies, their community tables, and really have staff present there to hear directly from groups. We also want to involve our folks in the school districts that might be participating in the high school STIF program. So just a quick overview of our engagement of community and how that is incredibly meaningful for us. We're not listing the groups here only because I'm trying to keep it incredibly high level. When it comes to engaging key stakeholders, our recruiter will be directly interviewing key lawmakers and community business leaders. Our board, you all, if Director Bowman hasn't looped you in, you will all be contacting key folks in your districts to invite them to participate, whether it be the survey or listening sessions. There are many ways to participate. Of course, we're going to be inviting everyone to participate and sending them the survey and instructions. And then the board search committee will be working on setting up a community panel and identifying key community, business, and thought leaders throughout the region to sit on a community panel to provide feedback on the GM finalists. We would be remiss to forget our own employees, and so there's going to be a lot of work to garner their feedback. All of our employees will be asked to take a survey, and we're going to be aggregating the responses from our surveys, or excuse me, from our employees, and put that into your hands so you can see what our own employees are saying. Our directors and managers, there will be a listening session for them in early March to have almost like a listening, a virtual town hall, so to speak, so people can voice their concerns. And then executive directors, a small group will meet with the recruiter to convey their qualities and characteristics. So engaging our employees as well. We have many tools that we are gathering feedback up from the public, our stakeholders, the community. Excuse me. First and foremost is our website, trimet.org/GM. You should all use this as a resource. This is the main page where we will be putting all of our opportunities, timeline, everything is on this page. We will be updating it throughout the entire process, much like we will be requesting feedback. We have developed a survey. I call it a universal feedback tool. You might call it a survey. But this is what we're going to be putting in the hands of everyone that we touch. It's available in English, Spanish, Chinese, Russian, Vietnamese, and Korean. We will be circulating the specific language surveys through the various community groups that we're working with. But we will be compiling all of this information and feedback for you. And this survey will keep open throughout. And I'll talk about the timeline a little bit here in a second, but we are putting this survey into everyone's hands. Case in point right here, our on-street folks have already been out there. They have these A boards and you'll see a big old QR code. In the time of COVID, we are all familiar with the QR code as we've scanned menus at restaurants or what have you to access further information. I know a question on here will be whether, does everyone have a phone? Pew Research says 94% of Americans have phones. We know from our latest ANA report that 84% of our riders back in 2018 had smartphones, and we know that number has grown even further as COVID has the need for internet in homes. So riders scan the code, it takes them right to the survey, and they can participate. We are having 4 virtual listening sessions. These are 90 minutes apiece, 3 in English, 1 in Spanish. And these will be primary times where we will be encouraging people to come and testify. Now, again, Director Bowman will be reaching out to all of you to help staff these. We obviously can't have all of the board members there because of the quorum, but she will be reaching out to all of you if she hasn't already to talk about staffing them. We will record these, so you will all have access to these meetings, but these are going to be very important as we will be encouraging many people to come and testify at these listening sessions. We are also going to be promoting our board meetings. So you have seen we have surveys, we have listening sessions, we're going to have facilitated discussions with community groups. We're going to be, and I'll touch on this in a second, all the different ways to comment. But if folks still want to comment and they want their voice heard before this board, we will be promoting the board meetings where folks can come out and testify before all of you during the public forum. And so again, once a month throughout this process, you'll be having that public forum for folks to testify further. We will be pulling in feedback through every means that we have possible. Obviously, the survey, using the web page for contacting us, emailing us, using social media through Facebook, Twitter, you name it, as well as text or call. And I would just note, you know, I made mention that 94% of Americans have phones, 84% have smartphones in our area. Calling us too, they can simply call our phone number. We will log their comments, and all of that will be routed to you. Just a quick note on how we're getting the word out. Obviously, every which mean that we have available here at TriMet, direct through phone calls, emails. We're sending out thousands of emails from lists that TriMet manages, as well as through our partners, and we're encouraging others to share. I would encourage you to share as well. All of our social media, our digital channels, earned media, this is TV and radio, and then paid ads. And we're also doing paid ads in multiple languages to get the word out. Finally, what are we doing with all this feedback? That's a very good question. So here's kind of a couple of steps that I want to walk you through. This huge wave that we're going through now between the middle to late March, we're gathering up this initial response, and we'll put together this initial report for the search committee. The search committee will make some tweaks to the job description. They will then work with the full board on the job description, which will be brought to your meeting, the board meeting in March. Before that board meeting, we will do one final pull of all of the, at that point in time, of all of the feedback that we've received to date. We will put it in your hands, and you can then verify the feedback that we have received and the changes made to the final job description. You will then consider that job description. We will then need it for recruitment, and recruitment begins in earnest after that final job description is approved. And I will say this, is that we will continue all of what you have just seen as far as feedback loop, where you will be constantly listening. The survey will be opening, we'll be pulling in all that feedback, excuse me, through all of our channels, and we will be providing that feedback to all of you once a week, every Friday, so that you can see as the GM search timeline progresses, you will be getting reports on what we're hearing from the community. We will not stop listening and passing that on to the board. Let's look at the timeline, and there are a lot of pieces to this, but I've tried to choose the highlights. Obviously, we are rolling out this campaign that the search committee approved last week at their executive session. So some pieces are still rolling out. We were delayed because of the snow and the power outages and internet outages. So it is still rolling out. Interviews, discussions, facilitated discussions will be underway here if they aren't already. The listening sessions, the first part of March, including the employee one. And I've just noted the board meetings during and the public forums, because I think that's very key that again, if anyone feels that they have not had their voice heard through all our various means, that they still can use our board meetings to reach this full board to express their views. I made mention of how the outreach will influence the final job description for the recruitment. April, here we go, recruitment underway, and they're beginning to vet candidates. Again, the board meeting. May starts the narrowing of candidates by the search committee. Again, the board meeting. In June, I made mention of a community panel that the search committee will be putting together. The community panel and the board will interview the candidates. However, we know that the board will select the final candidate. That final candidate will be, if fingers crossed, if all of our timeline works out, that candidate will be presented to the public during a special board meeting in June. And then at the board meeting, folks can still testify before the board on that candidate. And then they're at that meeting, hopefully, with fingers crossed, the board will approve the president of the board to negotiate a contract. So there's all that. Hopefully, fingers crossed, again, a new general manager starting in August. And I want to stress again to you all that this feedback loop will continue throughout this process. We will be taking feedback from the community, passing it along to you. Again, the board meetings will be key for all of you to hear from the community, as well as all of the different things that we're doing. With that, I kind of flew through that. I know that I've been at that 30,000 level, but I will stop there and take any questions that you might have. And I would just look to the search committee to see if I might have missed something, or I might have even misspoken. So I apologize for that if I have.
So Director Baumann, back to you.
Right, that looks very complete. I guess you get the message. We want to hear from the community. We're looking for every opportunity to do that. Looks like Kathy has her hand raised. Kathy.
Yes, hey everyone. Sorry, I was having some technical difficulties, but I do have a couple of questions for either JC or Lori and the executive search team. So one of my questions is around folks in the community being able to provide written testimony in other languages that aren't necessarily, the main languages that we serve. So if someone wanted to submit something in Somali, for example, would they be able to do that?
Absolutely. We have access to translation services for, I can't remember how many languages, but absolutely, we would have that translated and we would get it in front of you as part of one of your reports.
That's great. And then just my second piece is around the interview community panel. So I understand that folks are still, we're not quite there yet, and it sounds like we are still trying to figure out who's going to serve on there. But I would love to see some young people, some youth to be included on that panel, as well as some additional transit-dependent folks. So I guess it's a comment. It's more of a comment when we get to that point. That's perfect. And I appreciate that, Director Way. I would say that when we, as staff, obviously the search committee has final approval, but as we are looking to that, we definitely want to bring diverse voices to the table. And you hit it square on as far as youth, as far as folks needing various services. I think that's going to be incredibly important, especially for our future. So definitely on our radar.
Other questions or comments for Director Baumann or the entire search committee? And if any other members of the search committee have comments, this is also an opportunity. JC, you look like you wanted to say something more.
Yeah, sorry, it's always weird. I just heard from John Gardner, who said our initial GM recruitment announcement went out to 700 community-based contacts last week. So we are rocking and rolling. It's good to see. So well on our way.
Thank you. So Director Baumann, that's the end of your report.
That is the end of the report. Thank you. And I also
Thank
want to
you.
say thank you to Keith. He's already gotten back to me on which of those listening sessions he can attend. So thank you.
Yeah, I saw that. He's put us to shame here. So thank you, Keith. All right. So before we go on to the general manager's report, I am going to put an item under board reports, which I sent to you last evening, and also I believe it's been posted now, a resolution number 21-02-03, which is a resolution honoring Doug Kelsey. And as what you just heard earlier today, as I think a lot of everybody understands watching this, Doug Kelsey has decided to retire and move back to Vancouver, BC. And we wish him well, but I think it's important that we take a moment to just acknowledge all of the efforts and work he's done for TriMet in his couple positions here. So I've got a resolution which is quite long. I'm going to just paraphrase it so that in the interest of time, but it gives you a good idea of why we're not happy to see Doug leave, but we're really pleased that he has the opportunity to spend some more time with his family and do things that are fun for him. So this resolution, I'm going to start. It says, whereas the Tri-County Transportation District of Oregon and its board of directors wish to honor Doug Kelsey for his exemplary, inspiring, energetic, diligent, thoughtful, and decisive leadership and service to TriMet, the Tri-County region, and the people of Oregon. And then it goes on to say, whereas he started his career at TriMet in November of 2015 as the chief operating officer, where he brought a lot of experience from Canada and his multimodal experience to immediately apply those skills to improving the agency's safety practices and increasing on-time performance of the light rail and bus service. And whereas Doug also initiated the first ever comprehensive strategic plan, which really looked at achieving agency-wide goals while pursuing continuous improvement. And then on March 5th, 2018, following a national and international candidate search and after extensive community engagement, the board chose him to lead the agency as the general manager and continue and expand on all the work he had done as the chief operating officer. And there's a number of things, I'll very quickly go through them, but important to note that he did spend a lot of time improving safety practices throughout the transit district and helping the agency demonstrate its commitment to safety. And he also continually improved our bus and rail on-time performance and closed a lot of stops and made investments that really helped deal with choke points and delays in the system. Under Doug's leadership, the bus fleet was modernized and the average age went from 15 years old to 8 years. He expanded the district bus service district-wide, including the first ever bus line across the Fremont Bridge. He implemented an improved and expanded low-income fare program, which made honored citizen fare rates available to all TriMet's low-income riders, making transit more accessible. And then I think also importantly, work with the board and staff to decriminalize the TriMet fare enforcement system. And he's been a leader working with the urban planning and the support of the metro area's transportation and land use policies, and worked a lot with our local government leaders to prioritize public transit as a priority. He was instrumental in supporting the House Bill 2017. The governor and legislators appreciated his support. And he developed partnerships with multiple agencies and private organizations, including Metro, the Oregon Department of Transportation, the Portland Business Alliance, General Electric, and just a number more. I guess I forgot to mention he's also been working to essentially phase us out of diesel-fueled buses by the year 2040 and go to electrical propulsion or other types. And Doug, as you know, has been a tireless supporter of transit-oriented development and how to provide higher density, mixed use, and mixed income properties within walking distance of transit. It's been very important. And then we can't forget his leadership in launching the $175 million Division Street Transit project, which is really going to improve the Division corridor and transit service from Gresham to downtown Portland. So whereas throughout his tenure, Doug has demonstrated staunch and longstanding support for organizations representing communities of color, low-income citizens, and people with disabilities, and you heard some of that this morning, and consistently advocated for equitable practices in all agency actions. And whereas, I think this is really important, when public issues raised by widespread structural racism in America's institutions, including the transit agencies, were forcibly brought to everyone's attention by the murder of George Floyd and the nationwide Black Lives Matter demonstration, Doug, in conjunction with the board of directors, took immediate action, and he convened a blue ribbon committee to examine and evaluate the TriMet's transit police program and to understand the effects on our minority passengers. He immediately redirected $1.8 million annually from TriMet's transit police budget to explore new community-based services to expand our safety approach. He created the Reimagining Public Safety Outreach process and worked to establish the Transit Public Safety Advisory Committee, which led to recommendations to provide additional transit training for the transit security personnel, increasing safety personnel on the transit system, and to create a mobile crisis team to assist riders with behavioral health needs, all of which are now part of TriMet's Reimagine Public Safety program. So whereas during his tenure, Doug has just continually demonstrated strong leadership, creative initiatives, political wisdom, great political acumen, humility, humor, and vision. Now be it therefore resolved that the TriMet Board of Directors and the TriMet staff hereby express their sincere gratitude to Doug Kelsey for his dedicated service, and be it further resolved that a framed copy of this resolution be presented to Doug Kelsey as an expression of our heartfelt respect and appreciation. And then it would be signed by me if the board wishes to approve such a resolution. So what I'd like to ask now, before I ask you for comments, is there a motion to approve resolution?
So moved, Linda.
Okay, I have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Lori.
All right, I have a motion and a second to approve this resolution. Before we get to the vote, I'm going to give every board member an opportunity to comment on this. Do you want me to call on you, or do you want to just start?
I can start.
I'll go ahead.
Go ahead, Linda.
Start, Keith, you could.
Go ahead, Linda.
Okay. Doug, oh, wow. I'm grateful for your leadership, your ability to assemble a talented team of individuals, and then to inspire them to consider new ways of doing their work. You and I both talked about change theory and about where there has to be dissatisfaction with the status quo and a vision of a new way. Because of the change in our world, it has brought about, a dissatisfaction. People want more from us as an agency. And you have definitely provided the vision and the leadership and the support for the staff to move forward. The initiatives that you have and are happening, will continue regardless of your presence, which is a really strong sign of a good leader. And this is because you've made sure that the systems and processes are in place so that they carry forward regardless of your presence. I respect you, your ethics, your honesty, your compassion for others, and your vision of a better way. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to have known and worked with you for the last few years. Thank you so much.
Director Edwards.
Thank you. I have to echo everything that Linda said. And I think, what I appreciate most is that in a leader, you're always looking for things that are going to outlive your tenure. And certainly Doug has done that. He's put some things in that will be institutionalized in the TriMet system that are going to benefit the system for years to come. I also really appreciate the regular check-ins that you did individually with board members. I think that was very important and very meaningful because it made the board members know, let them know a little bit more of a hands-on approach as to what was going on. And also you certainly solicited feedback from the board as well. And so I really appreciate that openness and that transparency. So again, thank you. I certainly have mixed feelings about your departure because I'm not ready for you to go. But at the same time, I know that you have to move on and enjoy your retirement. And I certainly can appreciate that as I've been retired for a while myself. So I know that you will find certain endeavors that you will be involved in. And I know that Vancouver area will certainly enjoy your return. And I just hope for the best for you going forward in your retirement. Thank you very much, Doug.
Looking at the pictures, Director Bauman.
Thank you. What I've really appreciated about working with Doug is your combination of kind of practical and focused operational dimension of things like on-time performance, that you put a real focus on on-time performance, and that improved the experience of our writers every day. And so you had that sort of small bore focus on operational issues, but at the same time, you had a real vision about the future. And this is something that both Linda and Keith have alluded to. Thinking kind of longer term, for example, transit-oriented development, that's kind of a longer term vision that is going to benefit TriMet, but it's also going to have a big impact on the region as a whole, right? It's what the region is going to look like down the line. So I've really valued kind of both, that you are able to do both at the same time, which I think is pretty extraordinary. And I join the rest of the board in wishing you all the best in your retirement. Certainly well earned, and thank you for all you've done for TriMet.
Director Way.
Thanks, Doug, for just your leadership during this pandemic. I know that this has been, I think a very stressful time for many folks, and especially our leaders at the top who are just trying to balance and manage so much in this pandemic. And also all of the firestorms that we had last year and the recent storms. So, I think it is difficult to be in your position and to have to make many, many decisions that will affect many people's lives. So I appreciate the work that you have done for us. I will echo Director Edwards' comments in that I really did enjoy the one-on-one meetings prior to the pandemic where, I think you really listened and got feedback from individual board members around things that, we were interested in working on or pursuing. And my only thing is I had wished that those conversations had continued during the pandemic, because I think that relationship building and building trust is really important. So thank you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Director Gonzalez.
Oh, there we go. I was muted. Thank you for the opportunity to share what are very much unprepared remarks. Douglas, it's bittersweet to come to the moment of having to say thank you for all the work you've been doing. Not that you don't deserve the thanks, but because we're saying it in the stead of a transition, a departure. I'm not sure what it is about universal health care or why it is you're deciding it's time to go to Canada. It's not, it can't be that good, but we're not done here yet. We have so much important work to do. And it's a rare person that can have the vision to see what is not yet there and to see the steps that need to be taken today to get us there. And you have certainly brought that sort of vision in many instances across the agency. You were unafraid to take some bold steps to have us think bigger and longer than we are accustomed to. And I think it's a healthy thing for the agency to be doing. The work you've done in your short term here has certainly positioned us for work that we're going to be doing well beyond your stay. And I think it's that sort of leadership that helps the agency position for the future. Clearly, you've been at the helm during some really interesting times as public transit is getting redefined, as the relationship with the right-of-way seems to be getting reinvented by the world market. The place public transit plays is a very active conversation, and I really appreciate your focus on keeping it not only relevant in the conversation but central to what will make cities great as we move forward. So I'm glad that you were willing to walk into the unknown with us. I'm glad that you knew how to challenge the status quo and take a risk on new technologies and find the safest edge we could in trying to play as a partner in that. Yeah, I'm grateful that you've taken us into some of the directions you have with these big, bold visions. But we're just getting started. So as much as I would love for you to stick around and help us see through this work, I know that climate action is a job that has to live past any one person's job description. So I'm really glad that you've set us up for strategies to continue that work. There's clearly a lot left to do. I hope that universal healthcare keeps you around for a long time, because we want to continue to benefit from your mind in the transit and in the urbanization conversation that we're having across cities around the world. So with that, I'll stop. I'm sad. I'm grateful, and I can only say I wish you many, many wonderful days ahead, and we will continue to build on the legacy that you've started to put some foundational bricks into here at TriMet. Gracias.
So Doug, I guess I'll give you my comments. And I think every good thing about being last is most everything that needs to be said has been said. But I guess I just want to thank you so much for your almost 6 years of time and effort and service to TriMet, the region, the state of Oregon. It's appreciated, and as you heard, it's going to help us continue to improve transit service and deal with the changes that we know are going to be coming over the next few years. You brought some bold leadership and vision to TriMet. Your ideas about how we can become a world-class transit organization are just unbelievably exciting, and hopefully we'll be able to move those forward without you. And it's also my hope that you will continue to be a friend of this region and TriMet and come down and visit us on a regular basis and tell us what your observations are, how we're doing. But most of all is, I think what people are saying, you're going to be missed. We understand your desire to spend more time with your family and friends and move back to Vancouver. I know that you've now gotten into fly fishing, and so I hope to be able to find some time to get out on the river with you and find some fish, or at least have some fun casting a fly. So we will stay in touch. Again, the resolution is long, but it's true that you were involved in so many things in your limited time here that the public probably does not understand. And I hope this resolution brings to their attention all the wonderful things that have occurred under your leadership. So Doug, thank you, and good luck in your new chapter of your life. It's very much appreciated. Thank you to all of you. You bet. With that, is there, are we ready to call a question on the resolution? All right, with that, I'm going to say all those in favor of the motion to approve resolution number 21-02-03, which is honoring Doug Kelsey, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Probably a lot opposed, but it's because you're leaving. Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Again, Doug, thank you very much. I'm going to turn it over to you now for the as the general manager report. And if you want to say anything, Doug, you're more than welcome.
Well, thank you all very much. That was very touching. It was not anticipated, but I'm very humbled and grateful to have served not only you, but this region and an amazing group of talented TriMet people. You know, we've all come from different places. I'm very much from a working class background. I'm very proud of that. And we all use our different experiences in life. And what brought me to this region was a strong foundation of a great system. Sometimes you have to be from away to actually see what's actually here. And the base is so good. But the work, as you've already outlined, is so far from done. And I really believe the angels are aligned to the service we provide to this region. There's a strong tailwind, I believe, ahead for TriMet. Because this agency is not only just about transit, it's about mobility and improving livability as well. And we can learn from other places in the world, but the base is so strong here on so many fronts, whether it be the needed pursuit of further equity, reimagining safety, security, transit-oriented development, the whole going green part of the world, which is so long overdue, and we're in a race for our own livability. But I can honestly say, having worked in other places in the world, not just Vancouver, BC, the taxpayer should know what great employees that work in this agency. They really should. There is an amazing amount of talent here. There's so much work to do, but that's why we all come to work every day. And that's why this board does such great work that it does. So I really believe that the tailwinds are strong. There's going to be a large federal infrastructure program, but we need to take advantage of the calm to reload to get ready for this next, I believe, exciting expansion, of which we are going to be, I think, at the exciting crosshairs of. So it's been a joy, a part of my life and journey, just to have served you. So thank you all very much. So with that, I do need to get back to the task at hand of the real business. And yes, to Director Bauman's comments of dealing with the tactical, the here today, as well as positioning for the business for tomorrow. So what I'd like to do this morning is I want to restart off firstly, and I want to deal with just the immediate tactical if I can. There's about 4 or 5 updates. One of them will be TOD at the end of my report to you, my last report to you. I really would like to take a few moments to talk about the very challenging and uniquely challenging winter storm. You know, in my working career, I don't think I've ever used words such as historic, unprecedented, once in a lifetime. It's become way too frequent here in the last 12 months between COVID and riots and deep and deserved social unrest, the winter storms, the forest fires that Director Way referenced earlier. It's been quite something, and a lot of this all happened at once. What didn't hit us was just what we had just a few weekends ago. You know, and even if we go back to January, what this agency is going through, like everybody else, and the insurrection federally, this is just a stress-filled time. But out of our challenges comes some amazing things. Just recently, as we were hit with this other large storm. It was a frightening winter storm, which the region hasn't seen in decades. And in fact, the CEO of PGE, a colleague of mine, Maria Pope, she said it's the worst impact situation they've had in 40 years here. That's PGE. So they're still recovering. we still have several bus routes that are still having to be altered because of trees and other disruptions down the road. So we're still feeling the remnants of what one might think is just a regular storm. Far from it. The amount of ice that came down actually brought our system to a halt. Probably the first time in our history. And includes both max and bus. It hit us from every direction. Overhead wires that were arcing. Trains lost power, windshields iced over literally in front of the operators while they were driving the trains. The wipers couldn't keep up and such. Heated switch froze, the switches to go back and forth on the train tracks. A Ruby yard became coated in one giant impassable sheet of ice. And in fact, I'm just going to ask if maybe Kimberly or Jeff, you could bring up the couple of pictures I'm going to show you right now. And I think for the public at home, what was going on behind the scenes a little bit. And just a couple photographs, I think, start to tell the picture, which we all didn't go anywhere, but it shows you what our team was having to deal with behind the scenes. And I normally don't do that, but if you take one picture, in Canada, we call that a hockey rink. But that is actually, the top left picture is actually our Ruby yard, our main rail yard, and you can barely see the tracks. And that's what employees there was no ability to actually execute service. And so the other one in the bottom right is also, you'd have to zoom in a bit, but you can start to see all the frozen ice over all the overhead catenary wires. Next pictures. So here's an examples where literally the snow was up against the drifts, up against our services we provide, where they were frozen in time. This is one of these types of events that you're darned if you do and you're darned if you don't. So we had some people actually, unfortunately, got stranded out there. Our operators got stranded out there. And they were out there for many, many hours. And we actually sent some buses out. I think in 3 cases, we sent buses out to rescue people off trains. And they actually got stuck themselves. So this is such a unique circumstance and so significant that we literally became paralyzed even in our own recovery. From 711 to 211 to 411 to 911, no fire truck, police or ambulance emergency responders were even responding to our calls. So it was, we were truly paralyzed, if we will. Thank you. If you can just take actually, just move on to the next photograph to show you a couple trees down as well. There. So this is an example, the things that go, gee, why isn't the train coming? Well, these are the examples you're seeing here is maybe why not. And so we're so dependent on all of our partners who did an amazing job. We had so many of our, from PBOT, our partnership there, they had trouble getting their employees to work, as we did as well. But boy, did they sure do their darn and best. I'm going to give you one example of from one of our employees that I thought was just, I said this at my recent town hall. It was just a great example of some of the heroics that went on. For example, we had one of our public safety manager, Justin Dillon. He was assigned to our EOC, or we call Emergency Operations Center. And example of going above and beyond is an unsung hero. You know, his day started at 3 o'clock in the morning, a little bit earlier than normal on a Saturday. He used his personal truck to rescue 3 stranded rail operators. He pulled 3 non-revenue or regular vehicles from the snow and ice bank. He recovered another 14 TriMet vehicles back to TriMet parking lots, all basically before he got to work. And so it's just one example of many of what goes on with the show behind the scenes. And this is just one example of many that our team put on. So I can't thank our employees enough for what they have endured, what they went through, and what they delivered, and taking care of our customers. I also would like to thank and apologize to our customers. Some customers we could not take care of in the way our heartbeats wanted us to, and so we didn't get it all right those few days, for sure. And so I do want to apologize to each and every one of them, because we gave our best, but it wasn't enough to get you where you needed to go. So we are in the customer service business, and we are going to be doing lessons learned. We always do, because there's always things that we did really well and should be amazingly proud of, but there are things we did not get right. But that's what agencies knew is part to, rethink about how do you do it better next time, because we live in this greenhouse world now where it's going to happen again. And so we need to learn from that and learn quickly. So anyhow, we are back in service. I think it is just one example where Mother Nature always gets to make the final say. And she sure did that day. And but we're back up, we're running well. So but the team worked tirelessly for this. So I think that's probably all I want to say there on that one. The second item I'm just going to move to, if I can, is an update you all on COVID. We go from one challenge to another, but being the resiliency agency we do, on we go. There's some good news on COVID, and that's the portion of my report here is going to be about the vaccines today. I want to start on a positive note here, which has historically been quite challenging. There's still lots we don't know, but our Lyft paratransit operators are now eligible to receive the vaccine, and they are on their way getting that vaccine. So that's wonderful news, particularly for those who have health conditions and such. So it's the start for us. OHA, or the Oregon Health Authority, moved the operators into this phase 1 category. Understanding the work that they do provides assistance to those the sick and medically fragile. So they are, in fact, in some semblance, an extension of some of the healthcare service that we all need to provide. The operators are not required to take the vaccine, but those who choose so, that's a personal decision for us. We are not requiring that at all. But we strongly want to encourage people to be informed about it. We would ask that to make the decision that's right for them and their families when the time comes. And the operators in this case are contractors and they work for First Transit. So I want to thank them all and thanks for getting the shots. We are still waiting for the governor's Brown's order and the OHA when the rest of our employees will be eligible to receive vaccines. We are in touch every day. With the OHA, but we have not got our signal yet, or for the bell to ring for us to deploy our readiness plan. So, but when the time comes, we'll be ready. Also, a few weeks ago, we asked all employees to fill out a questionnaire to let us know, firstly, whether they're willing to take the vaccine, whether they plan to get through it through TriMet or by some other means, and if they have underlying health conditions that would move them ahead in the line of eligibility. So, interesting enough, we launched this just earlier last week, and we have had over 1,000 of our employees in 2.5 days fill out the form, which is terrific, showing the awareness and the importance of this. So that's very informative to us in terms of helping us deploy limited window shot times when they're available. We don't want to lose an empty slot that we can actually help somebody else in. So this is just an example of the many steps we're taking to ensure we're ready when the time comes. The next item up, I just wanted to give you a quick update on January's ridership. We have provided about 3 million rides in January. Despite the numbers of being down over a year, we were still provided millions of really essential trips. Looking at the numbers, we were down 61% from January 2020. The bus trips were down just over 60%. Max saw a 62.5% decline. A nugget I always look at in the analysis in here that the frequent service and off-peak service continue to perform a little bit better and operated in January at about 50% down compared to this time last year. So this is a great example of we have to take care of the immediate things like the storm, like COVID, to the service of the day, but we also have to take care of what are we ready for the ridership recovery when the time comes, let alone as the long-term strategy of the agency. So it's dealing with the short, medium, and long-term parts of this business, and this is a great example of that when the recovery time comes, the team is doing a significant amount of work, and I really want to thank JC Venata and his team to look at things like loyalty programs, et cetera. So when the time comes that we move back to herd immunity or better, that people can come back out, start using the system, that we're ready with a rider recovery program. So just want to let the board know that work is still going on extensively behind the scenes. The next and last item I had for you as an update today is really around transit-oriented development. So as part of my commitment to you, as we put together the long-term policy and strategy for transit-oriented development is to bring back quarterly updates to you. And so this is a long-term strategy, as some of your kind board words today articulated. But there's a lot of work going on. And now I want to just call on Bob Hastings, Lance Ers, and Guy Ben. And before I even let them speak, I want to also acknowledge Bob Hastings, who's going to be retiring in not too short of time, for all his amazing work for this agency. He is just been an absolute great leader and contributor. And if you ever need a storyteller around TriMet's history and this region's history, he is your man. So with that, I'm now going to turn it over to the three of those gentlemen to cover off the update on TOD.
Thank you, Doug. This is Bob, and I'm here with Guy and Lance, and we have some slides to share that hopefully Jeff can pull up. But as that's happening, we want to sort of opening comments about briefing the board on the TOD program that we're building on the TOD guidelines, which you ratified last year in 2020. And we recognize that in that process that there's still lots more work to move forward, moving from the vision into the reality. And there we go. Thank you, Jeff. The overarching need was identified in the guidelines that we are working to create a community around our transit stops, primarily on the MAX system. But we will be looking at capacity corridors as the program moves forward. Next slide, please. In order to do that, we had to find some funding. We had a bit of a budget just to get the three of us up and running as a program. And as we started to look out in 2019 and 2020, and thanks to the wonderful work of our colleague Cora Potter, we saw that there was an opportunity through ODOT's Transportation Growth Management grant. And we applied for that and received that, and we've been working closely with ODOT to bring that into fruition. We're just getting that kick started this month and really becoming active in March. But the opportunity with that grant was to look across the whole transit system, across the region. And in simple parlance, what we are using this grant for is to take the aspirations of the TOD guidelines and work to make those real. Looking at the dimensions of what would work in terms of market viability, but also what is going to meet the needs of the various communities across the region. And as we've heard time and time again, and as our board represents, one size does not fit all. And yet we need to have a way to have a kind of a consistent approach as we begin to plan our strategy for transfer and development at the different station areas. We want to also leverage, that's a word we'll be using a lot, the existing investments that have been made, obviously through capital projects, but also through the service and the evolution of the service in the region. So this is a dynamic approach, and we're looking to create a model where we can engage with folks in the region, get the advice, the counsel of people who are very engaged in livable communities across the region, but then also get the specific input from stakeholders who are very much associated with the very specific station areas. We will look for a couple of pilot projects to really articulate how one of Ozzie Gonzalez's favorite words, how a typology, meaning how does the aspirations in the guidelines really begin to land on the ground and start to articulate not just kind of this is the baseline of what is being done, but here is the aspiration of what could be done. The board, you have articulated that one of the great attributes of General Manager Kelsey is giving us the vision to shoot for. And this work is about looking over the horizon and seeing what is possible into the future. And by bringing people into this process, this is not just TriMet dictating what the solution is, but TriMet helping to set the table where folks in our community and at these station areas can really develop what that looks like. We're looking at best case lessons from BART and other transit authorities across the United States and internationally. We want to create, was said earlier this morning, a world-class approach, a really best in practice program. We look to develop these over this coming year. And as Doug and I both sort of wave goodbye, but we know that the work will carry forward and will build. Next slide, please. Again, thanks to Cora's help, we saw that there was another opportunity, this time from the Federal Transportation Administration, their own program to provide funding to look at transferring development along a particular corridor. And this is working hand in glove with the Red Line extension from PDX out to Hillsborough. And this allows us to take a corridor specific approach. So ODOT is a very broad regional, but this is going to be looking specifically at the corridor, and we're going to be looking specifically on both the east and west parts of the Red Line extension. We know that there's a real opportunity, again, which Doug Kelsey brought to the region's attention in the Gateway district and neighborhood. Also the Park Rose Park and Ride Station. So East County, which is in crying need for some real action, we want to work again with partners in the neighborhoods and organizations, as well as our jurisdictional partners. In fact, this grant actually has people at different agencies in the region putting their own funding in with staff support to realize this effort. City of Portland has made a substantial contribution or promised to do that, as well as the City of Beaverton and the City of Hillsborough and Washington County and Metro. So with these regional partners, we're going to be looking east and west in places where we have made that investment, but we haven't translated it necessarily into the kind of density in some of our station areas. What is the result that we're looking for in these studies? It's to set up what could be that over the horizon opportunity for development and repurposing and revitalizing and re-envisioning our own transit properties, but in the process of doing that, seeing these as catalytic for the surrounding neighborhoods and communities that they serve. So I'll end those remarks and obviously open to questions or suggestions from the board. Thank you.
I
Director
couldn't find
Gonzalez?
thanks. I couldn't find the hand raising function fast enough, so I'm just relying on camera. Thank you. Thanks, Bob, for presenting the update. You know me, I'm an impatient chap, so I see the station area planning is underway. When do you foresee that some of the ideas that come out of the station area planning might translate into potential projects or invitations for people to start actually doing stuff? When does that happen?
The short answer is that would begin to happen towards the end of 2021, certainly by 2022. In fact, Commissioner Gonzalez, what you're looking for is exactly what we want to be able to articulate to folks. Here is the opportunity. And in this opportunity, we've already done the legwork with our jurisdictional partners that there is a path for this to move forward and to have them participate in that vision in order to create the success for moving these efforts forward. I think in the past we've seen where sometimes good ideas, if they don't align with what is that particular jurisdiction's either needs or their regulations, that you can run afoul of that timing. So this is really about not knocking down roadblocks, but looking for that leaning in where people understand that by making some changes, perhaps regulatorily, or with financial participation or some other obstacle being moved out of the way, we can move into this sooner rather than just being a planning study.
Thank you, thank you. And a follow-up final question about the role other agencies, other jurisdictions will have in this station area planning process, since they potentially have vested interests or obstacles. What role do you see them playing?
I think, and thank you for that question. So I'm going to highlight the city of Portland and the Bureau of Planning, the Bureau of Development Services, Prosper Portland, and the Bureau of Transportation, all of whom have been engaged in this conversation, all of whom will participate in these efforts, all of whom have expressed that willingness to look at what can happen at these very particular neighborhoods and stations, recognizing that without their active participation, that they're not going to receive the benefits of this catalytic opportunity. Same thing follows with great involvement in the city of Beaverton. The city of Hillsborough is very enthusiastic about this opportunity too.
I might just jump in on this one, is not just locally. One of the areas that we are not ready for this conversation fully yet, but down the road, and I just didn't want this to be lost, I think there's an immense opportunity here that we've got some investigative work to do with the real estate development partners themselves around how, in fact, we approach the state and other partners around tax concessions for development at the state level, particularly around where TriMet is directly involved or is a key strategic partner, to accelerate and raise the viability up so we in fact can get to more accelerated affordable housing and development. So I think that's one nugget I'll leave for the agency. We were not ready for it yet, but I've had discussions with real estate developers around this exact issue, and it comes to mind where there's a tremendous uplift opportunity where there's prosperity to share. So I think this is an area that can really position TriMet and the acceleration program down the road, not just at the regional level, but at the state level as well. So any other questions? If not, I'll conclude, but just want to make sure people...
Doug, this is Bruce. I just had a question. I want to make sure that Bob or the other staffers heard the testimony from Doug Allen this morning, who was very concerned about the transit area development, oriented development in Gateway and around the station there impacting operations. So I just want to make sure we reach out and understand their concerns. It looks like you've got a great community engagement process, and so I assume that will be done.
Thank you.
Correct. Yeah. And to Doug Allen's comment, I think he specifically also referenced the 11th Avenue turnaround. For those who know it, we've got like 3 tracks there turnaround. That is very much a piece of real estate that's in play. We may not need all those tracks, and you can build over top of it, where you look at things like air rights. So those are things that are already on our mental drawing board as opportunities that Doug correctly outlined today. So yes, we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, Mr. Board President, that concludes my report and my final report. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your report and your final report. We're sad to say. All right, with that, what I'm thinking is we'll go through the consent agenda, and I don't know how people are feeling, but maybe we need a break, because I know that at least 3 of the board members have been on this since about 8 o'clock in the morning. So I'm going to go on to the consent agenda and then determine if we want to break. So there's 2 items on the consent agenda today, and for those watching, the consent agenda items are considered to be routine and may be approved by a single board motion. But any board member may remove an item from the consent agenda for a discussion or questions by requesting such action prior to the consideration of this portion of the agenda. And again, there's 2 items. The first is approval of the board meeting minutes for January 27th, 2021. And then the final one is just one that says we will read ordinances by title only. So is there anything on the consent agenda any board member would like to have removed?
No, Mr. Chairman, but I do have a comment I just wanted to share with Kimberly, that there's a typo at the end of the paragraph under section where it talks about resolution 21-01-01. And it says the last sentence there before we move to action was stop necessary, steps necessary to, it says being, and it should say begin the search process. It's just a typo that needs to be corrected.
Thank you for that. Any other typos or changes to the Okay,
I just have a question.
sure.
So if I wanted to lift up a particular resolution under resolutions, would this be the right time to bring it up for discussion or not?
I'm sorry, restate that, Director Way.
So if I wanted to lift up a particular resolution that the board will be considering today, can I bring that up now as a request for discussion, or do I need to wait until we get to that resolution?
Well, we're going to get to it's a resolution that is on today's agenda you're talking about?
Correct. I'm specifically naming resolution 21-02-07, lifting that up because we just faced a winter storm. I think we need more time as a board to really consider this before we vote on it today. And I have other additional reasons, but I just wanted to ask if this would be the appropriate time to talk about that particular resolution.
Well, I think what we should do is let's take action on the consent agenda if we could get that action, and let's talk about if we want to change the order or talk about any resolutions. But what it sounds like is maybe you'd like to get that talked about early on in the resolutions and dispose of one way or the other. Is that fair?
Yes, thank you, President Warner. I don't do a lot of these, so I just wanted to make sure I was following the right rules.
Okay,
But
we'll
yes,
get to
that
it.
sounds great.
All right, good. So on the consent agenda, is there anything else on the consent agenda that people have concerns or questions about? Hearing none, then, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda with the change to the minutes that was noted by Director Edwards?
So moved.
Have motions are second?
Second, Linda.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor? Did somebody else have a question? Nope. All those then in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda as presented and changed by amended, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion is approved unanimously. All right, so what I'd like to do is I've seen people raising their hands wanting to take a break. So why don't we take a 10-minute break, come back and get to the resolutions. And what I will do, Director Way, is we will move resolution 21-02-07 up to the beginning, and we can talk about that first. All right?
Thank you. That sounds wonderful.
All right. Let's have a 10-minute break. I've got 10:48, so come back at 11 o'clock on the dot. All right. Thank you. All right, I see people starting to come back. So the cats are out of the room, Linda?
Yes, it was Finn, and everybody growls at Finn. He's a boy, and so the sun is out now. It was very foggy here this morning, and so I just let him out. It was too cold this morning, so he was in. He has his own room in the house that he can be in, that has a window and all of his other accoutrements, and so yeah. He's out now, and everybody else seems to be sleeping, which is good.
The disruptor is gone. Good.
Yeah.
All right.
So Doug, do you still have your cat?
No, our cat passed away about 6 months ago. So we're yeah. So she was a white, total white, blue-eyed cat. So, but had a good long life, 17 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I lost one of mine who was also 17 in December. So yeah. They, it happens, but it's still hard. At least your clothes won't be white. I tell
so true.
I tell anyone that comes into my house, no matter how much I clean, don't wear dark clothes. You're gonna look like a fur ball when you leave.
All right, well, it's 11 o'clock, so I'm going to call us back into order. And we're down to our regular agenda item number 4, which are our resolutions. And I have a request from Director Way to move Resolution 21-02-07 forward for discussion. And I think we will do that unless somebody from the board objects. All right, then I'm going to say, let's move on to that resolution in order for us to figure out whether we want to do any deferrals or changes on this. I think it's important we have the staff report, and the folks who are ready to do the presentation today give the report. So Mr. General Manager, are you ready, and is the staff ready to present this item?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Mr. Board President and members of the board. The resolution before you today is to request authorization for TriMet into a series of new intergovernmental agreements for transit police services. These agreements will allow us to continue having sworn police officers from agencies within this region and district specifically to assist our employees, customers, riders to respond to emergencies where, in fact, the law is required. And it's also, even as late as last night, I got an email from an employee feeling not safe and looking for more support, just like this resolution brings to you today for police support out there. And this is actually from a cleaner. The resolution specifically states, though, that fair inspection would be conducted almost exclusively by personnel who are not law enforcement, and that's important. It also stipulates that our transit police will participate in all training that's recommended by the Public Safety Advisory Committee that we have established, and established through also, as this board was as well aware, the whole broader strategy of reimagining public safety and security initiative. It was brought to the board strategy session last November. This prime contract before you would go to the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, or MCSO, and that agency would lead the overall division. As the board knows, we do not have employees who are police officers or not of it, so we actually rely on our contracted partners to help execute this part of public safety. Now, one of the benefits of this specific move is that it provides new opportunities to connect customers and services offered also by Multnomah County, including behavioral health directly, as well as services to improve the quality of life. Again, this is all part of the broader reimagining safety security. Additional law enforcement agencies would provide services under these agreements that include Clackamas, Washington County Sheriff's Office, and Beaverton, Gresham, Hillsborough, and the Port of Portland Police. The resolution you have before you is they're for 5-year agreements with a budget totaling $66 million over that period. And we would continue to work extensively on our reimagining public safety plan, which you have seen before you with specific timelines. And while we reallocate the $1.8 million, which I've already indicated in our budget for fiscal year 22, there'll be funding that would add for support services beyond that for other reimagining initiatives as they're needed. So the $1.8 million would come from our transit police division, though, specifically, and invest in these community-based resources and improving safety security on the system overall. And the intention as part of reimagining was always that we had intended to keep transit police on the system. So with that, we're also very fortunate today to have the sheriff from Multnomah County Sheriff's Office with us, Sheriff Mike Reese. So I just want to see if Mike's online right now and just introduce him to the board. Mike, I know, would probably make some comments and perhaps answer any questions the board members may have. So Mike, are you online?
I am, and President Warner and members of the board, can you hear me okay?
We can, Sheriff.
Yes.
Great, thank you very much. Well, as Doug said, I'm Mike Reese, the Sheriff of Multnomah County, and I'm really pleased to be here today. I want to provide just a little bit of context because we began this journey of evaluating law enforcement services with TriMet back in 2019. At that time, alongside your leadership team, we started exploring new opportunities to connect with the communities we serve. At the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, we envision a safe and thriving community for everyone. And our mission is to support all community members through exemplary public safety service. Over the last year, MCSO finalized our strategic plan to guide us through the next few years with a foundation centered on equity, aligning our values as an agency with community values and identifying measurable goals for success. As we reflect on our role as public safety professionals, those we serve are asking us to continue maintaining a safe community while also working on significant reforms to our criminal justice system. We're really excited to begin this work on this endeavor with you, reimagining a multifaceted model of TriMet agency personnel and unarmed security to de-escalate issues at the lowest level, aligning with community values, and seeking alternative solutions prior to criminal justice system involvement. We're committed to having community members jointly identify the strategies we'll use to address local issues. We value the work of our equity and inclusion manager and the work that she does every day engaging in and evaluating the challenging dynamics we face in today's environment. I think maintaining a safe and welcoming public transit system includes trustworthy and accountable peacekeeping services. And the Multnomah County Sheriff's Office has a long history of building and maintaining community trust and developing innovative solutions to public safety issues. I believe in your mission of providing the quality mobility options and connecting people to their community. And you are the foundation that allows for a thriving and healthy metropolitan community. Together, MCSO and TriMet have an opportunity to create something really vibrant, a safe and welcoming transit system that serves everyone in our community. So thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Sheriff Reese. I'm also, just if you could just hang in there, Marla, I'm just going to bring you on right now. If there's anything you want to add to the comments provided so far before we open this up for any questions the board may have.
Great. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I really want to thank the TriMet board and the TriMet staff that assisted with the Reimagine public safety efforts, including the community members who participated in the surveys, the focus groups, the advisory committee, and our employees who shared their stories of their safety and security concerns and needs. It is through these efforts that you will see our new innovative community-informed public safety initiative where we will use highly trained non-police personnel to balance the need of safety and security. We will expand our community policing initiatives with Multnomah County Sheriff and pass it through our 3-county area. Policing should be regional, consistent, and coordinated across jurisdictional boundaries, which requires the community partnerships that we've engaged in for the last 9 months. The IGA also memorializes transit police that they do not conduct fare inspections, and we will de-escalate and use police only when needed. We will strive to have our security and policing practices and outcomes to be transparent and accountable, proactive rather than reactive, And therefore, our vision to reimagine public safety is to provide excellent policing using these partnerships, innovation, technology, and serve our riders with the respect, integrity, and dedication to build public trust. Our goal is to provide community-supported public safety programs that are regional in nature and welcoming for all. And I'd be happy to entertain any questions either. Thanks.
Okay. Well, thank you, Marla. I think President Warner, I probably at this point in time, that's the recommendation in front of you. So we're all prepared to answer any questions the board members may have or further actions.
I see Director Way has her hand up, so I will call on her. She has a question. I think she wanted to ask Sheriff Reese. You're muted still.
Okay, I will finally get the hang of this thing by the end of this year. I promise. I do have a question for Sheriff Reese. Thank you again so much for being here today and talking a little bit about this new sort of community engagement model. My question is very specific on whether or not your office will work directly with Department of Homeland Security on any type of ICE activities on our system.
Director Way, that's a great question, and I have a strong commitment to keeping our deputy sheriffs and police officers out of the business of enforcing immigration laws and rules. There can be no daylight between what we expect of our police officers and deputy sheriffs in providing services to everyone in our community. And that means that we're building a trusting relationship with communities that have been marginalized at times. And we can't enforce immigration laws and have a trusting relationship. So there's a really bright line for our deputy sheriffs and our police officers that they're not engaged in that work.
Thank you, that's helpful. And I just have a second follow-up question. So if someone is, let's say, unable to communicate in English, or they have a disability, and yet they were interacting with someone in uniform, Sheriff Reese, can you talk a little bit about your current workforce and the types of languages that are being spoken, or just who do you have, just so that we as a board have a sense of, okay, these are the folks in uniform that will be interacting with our public?
Well, let me say first that we have an affirmative responsibility to communicate with everyone. And so regardless of the barrier or the language issue, or whether or not that person needs technology, we have an affirmative responsibility to work with that person so that their voice is heard. It's one of the foundations to community-based policing, that notion of procedural justice, where you listen to and value the people's voices that are in our community. We use technology most frequently to communicate with people, so access to language lines and other devices that allow folks that may not have the ability to speak or to hear to communicate with our deputy sheriffs. And we have very robust technology as a requirement, not only for our deputy sheriffs, but also our corrections deputies. So our agency, I think, is at the forefront of good practices in that area.
Thank you. Those are all the questions that I have for now.
Thank you, Director.
This is Bruce. I have a question for Marla. In terms of the timing of this coming to us now, you've been working on this for a long time. And are there some timelines that we need to be aware of in this item?
Yes, Director Warner. Currently, we have extended the police IGAs for 9 months now. We are at the end of our fiscal contract. We do not have any means to extend the contracts further or defer this. The police contract will sunset in March 31st of 2021. Therefore, it is prudent that the approval occurs so that we can actually enter into IGA contracts with our subsidiary partners and with our prime contractor, Multnomah County Sheriff's Office. And also, if our contracts do expire, we will not have a transit police division that can support our employees where the police need to respond to our system and care for them while they're having to deal with assault issues or follow up with assault claims that our employees face. And the municipal police will be competing with all other calls on the system. So therefore, if the city of Portland has many calls that evening at the same time a TriMet call is in, they will prioritize those calls, and we may not get a police response on our system. So this is a life safety issue, and it is important that we do not delay the timing of this resolution because we will not have any other options.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Bruce,
Yes.
I'd like to call for the question, and then there can be further discussion.
Well, okay. Well, what I hear you saying, would you like to make a motion to approve this resolution?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second, Lori.
Lori, okay. So let's talk about this, and because I think Kathy, I think you wanted to talk about, do we want to move forward with this now, is what I think you were saying. So please, let's make any changes or comments that we need to on this.
Mr. Chairman, I had my hand up also.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead, Director Edwards.
Well, thank you. This might be a question for Marla. I wanted to ask, is there any periodic oversight from the public that's going to be incorporated into this this plan, so that they have some input, and they and we also have periodic reports to know you know, how things are going in regard to these agreements, so that our so that the public is their interest is heard, and their issues and concerns are being can be addressed.
Yes, Director Edwards, it's a great question. One of the outcomes from the Reimagine Public Safety and the Advisory Committee, or the Blue Ribbon Committee, was to formalize and adopt a Reimagine Public Safety Advisory Task Force Committee. This task force committee will be made up of three members from 3 different counties, and we will also have a board member that will be appointed to that. That will be the opportunity for us as TriMet, and along with Multnomah County Sheriff's Office, to share the advancements on the IGA contracts and the content of those contracts, and also to be able to get community input and feedback, especially around the new Reimagine activities of decreased police personnel on the system, but increase mobile health teams and other response teams on the system to be able to adequately address our riders' safety concerns. Also, one of the other items that came out of the Blue Ribbon Committee recommendations is to have an annual report that will be given showing and highlighting the evaluation we've done on the programs and the effectiveness and the outcomes of those programs. So we look forward to bringing that to you. I think we've also tentatively stated we would come back to the board in the first quarter, maybe early second quarter, to share you what achievements we have already done around the Reimagine Public Safety Initiative, including the policing contracts.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marla. Do we have a criteria for the makeup of who will be on the task force?
We are working on that right now with John Gardner's group and getting feedback from the different members that was in the advisory committee. We know that there was a lot of interest from those that were on the Blue Ribbon Committee to keep participating in those in the advisory task force committee, and we will certainly reach out to that group. We want it to be reflective of the community. We want the makeup to be very similar to the Blue Ribbon Committee, representing those that have disabilities, those who are from lower socioeconomic communities, the BIPOC community. I'm trying to think of all of the profile that John Gardner did. We would try to resonate that advocates for the houseless community and really make sure that we are serving all of the community voices that we need to hear from to be able to create this reimagined public safety.
Are the individuals that will be on that task force, do they have a term that's that they're going to be assigned, like a year, 6 months, 2 years? And if so, I would hope that they would be staggered, so that we don't lose a whole group of task force members all at the same time.
We are working on the charter right now, and it's in draft form, and I will definitely add that if it's not already in there, to have staggered terms and limits.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Director Gonzalez, I see your hand is raised.
Thank you. Yes, I managed to find the function on the machine.
Congratulations.
It's the small things that allow the day to triumph. So I do have a question for you, Sheriff Reese. It's nice to see you again. I'm curious about what role you might have had or your agency might have had during the preceding reimagining public safety effort that TriMet just went through. I'm curious about any sort of exposure, if there wasn't much of a role, what exposure you have already had in the process of coming to today, and if you have any words for us as the board or the public about how that effort is folding into you rolling into this proposal and this contract.
Yeah, thank you for that question, Director Gonzalez. I think we have had a role and relationship in this process. The leadership transitioned in August of 2020 as the Portland Police Bureau pulled their leadership team out, and we had a lieutenant assigned to the Transit Police Division that stepped in and then was also assisted by the captain of our community engagement unit. And so the reimagining happened in concert with our conversations with the TriMet leadership team around public safety and well-being on the system, and looking at alternatives to uniformed police officers, and using models like our HOPE team, where we have homeless outreach, programs of engagement, teams that work on houseless issues and livability issues in East County, using that as a model for how we may do things differently with the Transit Police Division moving forward, bringing in additional capacity from Multnomah County Behavioral Health Units and the Joint Office on Homelessness. So I think there's been really vibrant conversations. I see this as a great opportunity, a model for what the future of safety and well-being can be on a transit system, as transit agencies across the United States are addressing these same questions right now. And I want to be at the forefront of really good practices that align our values as public safety professionals with community values and expectations.
Thank you for sharing that information and that perspective, Sheriff. And I now have a question for Ms. Marla Blagg. This has to do with something you mentioned earlier with regards to the extensions. I'm curious as to, with regards to the timeline, why were there extensions? Like, I understand we're kind of at a moment here with regards to the contract termination, but I wasn't clear on what prompted the need for extensions along the way. Why are we kind of at this moment talking about it? I guess that's the question.
Yeah, Director Gonzalez, we were poised at the end of the last fiscal year to move forward with the police contract, and the unfortunate occurrence of George Floyd happened. And with that, the general manager had chosen not to put the contracts forward because we had enough funding in the current contracts to be able to do an extension. And that would allow us the time to do all of the Reimagine Public Safety. As you know, it was a very robust and very aggressive community outreach program. And that took us pretty well through July until the end of December. And then we have been actively working on contracts concurrently at the same time while the extensions were given so that no police contracts expired during this time. It's, you know, an effort of unfortunate challenges for COVID and George Floyd and winter storms that we are bringing this to you now. It would have been our preference to bring it to you a lot sooner, but other constraints happened.
Thank you. And, you know, to that end, I'm curious if you could share with us what is a life safety issue, an example of a recent life safety issue that is being responded to right now by the transit police staff in these winter or pandemic times?
Yeah, and I'll just grab my little crime stat sheet here in front of me. Our biggest concern right now is operator and employee assaults. Those are rising. In January of 2021, we had 73 employee assaults versus in January 2020, we had 36 for the month. So it's almost doubled, if not it is double. Our other crimes that we have a really big uptick on weapons on the system, from guns to knives to machetes. We frequently see that, never mind a lot of bricks, rocks, and other items, BB guns being shot at our buses and trains. We've had several number of our buses busted out with people being aggressive and bad behavior and throwing large objects at our buses. And just, I think in the last day or two, one of our bus operators tried to correct someone's behavior. They got off the bus and busted out the window and threw an object at the operator. So that's the most part. It's a lot of crimes against persons, crimes on the property, and then weapons and drugs on our system.
And thank you. I appreciate that. And I didn't mean to spring, you know, these detailed questions at you, but it helps to point to something that I think is critical for us to understand as the public about the kind of things that the kind of work that is being done by this part of the agency or the staff at this time. But also it points to something that I think is also missing in the storyline of the kind of work that our community needs, frankly, and could and should be part of that community service story. And I'm thinking about, you know, the recent winter issues with the folks not being able to be served. There was ice on the tracks. There was folks that were dropped off nowhere near where they wanted to be. And you know, being able to serve the public in those instances, the examples Director Y brings with folks not being able to communicate, you know, easily in the language, and just navigating and how to learn how to be good users of the system, how we have that community service lens, and how important that work is as well. And I know that as we reimagine public safety, these become stronger elements in building the trust relationship Sheriff Reese describes. So I appreciate that, and I'm not trying to pontificate too much, so I'll leave that because I know we're still in the question round, but I thank you for that information.
Dr. Way, I see your hand is back up.
Yes, and I know that Director Edwards also has his hand up. So, so if I may, I will go first and just sort of ask a clarifying question. So I just heard General Manager say that this was a $66 million contract over 5 years, and that is not what I'm seeing in the resolution language. What I'm seeing for the fiscal impacts is that this would be close to $100 million over 7 years. So I just want to clarify that.
What's going on?
So I'm looking at number 6, fiscal/budget impacts. That's correct. So it's not $66 million over 5 years, but it's closer to, it's the exact figure that I see is $98,517,839. That this contract would be extended from 2021 to 2028.
I am incorrect, and the resolution is correct. So I stand corrected on my comments there.
Great.
Thank you
And
for
I think
catching
I just, yeah, and I just want to point the significance of the vote that is before us today, because this is a large contract that our board is going to be considering. And before I continue to editorialize it, because I have other additional thoughts, my question to Marla would be, why do we have these 7-year contracts? Why is it not an annual review? And why are we also not voting on it with each individual jurisdiction?
Thank you, Director Wade. Our contracts are 5 years with 1-year renewal extensions to 2 years, so that's why it's a 7-year contract. Anytime either party can terminate this contract, so even though it is 7 years, and I hear your concerns that it's a long contract, if we determine that TriMet determines that the Multnomah County Sheriff is not performing optimally under this contract, the contract can be amended, renegotiated, or terminated. So I wouldn't be as concerned about the length of time, because we do have a termination clause that protects us.
I might add here, in terms of the 5-year primary contract versus the 2-year options, also to be in this, for Multnomah County sheriffs and our partners to be in this, they also need to understand what they're going to be hiring and creating employment and training. There's a whole infrastructure support side to this that is more than just a 1-year or 2-year or 3-year type of program. So there needs to be a 5-year piece of implementation work that would come with underneath this upon approval. So a short-term contract would not suffice to give commitment to the partnership that others are doing a lot of planning in the region around.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful. And I think what I was hearing from all of the different reimagining safety conversations was that we really need to continue to hear and center the voices of folks, particularly our young people, particularly BIPOC, who have been affected by, law enforcement or transit police. And I guess what I'm still missing, and what gives me pause as to why I feel like this discussion needs to be tabled to a later date, is that a winter storm just literally happened. The Clackamas County Board of Commissioners declared a state of emergency. I myself, as a board member, was without internet for about 5 days and just received a board briefing on this topic 3 days ago. And I just am missing the voices of my constituents in Clackamas County. I know that Clackamas County, there's a budget for $4.2 million. There are 8 additional jurisdictions that, I'm glad that Sheriff Reese is here to sort of speak on behalf of Multnomah County, but I think there are many other jurisdictions and cities that are missing from this presentation today. And I think that it would be wise of us as a board to delay this vote because all of the reasons I just had stated. I think we just need more time. And I think for me as a board member to make a decision, I just need to better understand in a public forum these contracts, the languages that are involved, and also just to hear from the other jurisdictions that are a part of this. So those are my thoughts. I think to have this vote now, just when we were literally recovering from a winter storm, and not having, again, enough people have the opportunity to really consider this, for the public to engage and have a discussion and come to our board and to talk about this, I think it's a little bit of a, I think we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Okay. Director Edwards, did you still have your hand up?
Yes, I did. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question for Sheriff Reese, and thank you again for being here, Sheriff. In today's world, you know, there's a heavy leaning on social issues and social concerns for an alternative as to police action. Could you share what the relationship that MCSO has with social service agencies, and is it seamless, and is it amiable, and what specifically happens when there's an occasion for Multnomah County sheriffs to be involved with some kind of an incident or interaction with the public, and it's called, and they need someone that is more versed or skilled in working with someone that has a disability, or someone that may be a houseless citizen with other issues.
Thank you for that question, Director Edwards. The Multnomah County Sheriff's Office has a really great relationship with our social service partners. I like to talk about a continuum of care in public safety and public health, and they are integrated. So the work that we're doing as public safety professionals often intersects with our public health partners. So we have great relationships with organizations like Transition Projects, Central City Concerns, Volunteers of America, the Joint Office on Homeless Services, and others who work in this area with us. A lot of the folks that we see in public safety are also in the public health system. They have substance use disorders, they have mental health issues, and our job, quite frankly, is to connect them to services and resources that are going to have better outcomes than what happens in our criminal justice system. We're committed to that work, to diverting people from the criminal justice system. And then when there are people that are in our system because of the criminal issues, that the behavior that got them involved in some justice involvement, our job is to help them heal and to connect them to resources through maybe our pretrial services, as well as when people are coming out of our correctional environment, to make sure that we do a warm handoff to service providers. And that is a really vibrant, strong relationship that we have.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. And I kind of thought that was the attitude, much different than PPB, to be quite honest. And it's more of a rehabilitative approach than it is a punitive approach. And so I can certainly respect that. Marla, I had another question for you as well. Do you have a chart that kind of shows what happens in this plan when we have our agreements with the different law enforcement agencies, and how it comes down to the actuality of implementing the plan?
I'm not sure I understand, Director Edwards. Are you asking if we have a strategic plan on how we implement this?
No, I want to know what happens. We have a contract with an agency, and that agency is responsible for handling what we consider alleged criminal behavior. So we call them, and they respond. What happens from there? How does that process work? What does that look like?
The flow chart.
Yeah, so basically, if an operator can call into the Operations Control Center and request for assistance. The Operations Control Center will determine what type of assistance they need and if it can be resolved with a road or rail supervisor. And if so, they will send that road or rail supervisor to assist the operator. Sometimes it is a belligerent passenger, someone who's not responding to the operator's request, and they may ask for G4S security detail. Only when the road and rail supervisor cannot resolve or resolve the situation, and G4S cannot resolve the situation, and if there is danger to others and to themselves, that they will call the transit police to ask for assistance. And that goes through the Operations Control Center, or it will go through our Bureau of Emergency Communication. So it could be a 911 call that one of our riders just requests support. Does that answer your question, Director?
That partially answers it. So I'm a driver and I have an incident. So do I have to be the one to ascertain whether I need to call the intergovernment agency that we have a contract with, or do I call a social service agency, or do I leave that up to them?
That's exactly what they'll do, is they'll call the Operations Control Center, and OCC will ask the operator, what is your need? What do you have? And the operator, remember, we don't have the mobile health crisis response teams on duty yet, and we haven't hired that yet. That's going to be our next step. But we will have to develop standard operating procedures for our Operations Control Center to be able to ask questions. And it will be something like, do they have a weapon in their hand? Or are they threatening people? Are they being violent? Or are they just talking to themselves? And that will help them determine what type of staff to send support, and whether or not a mobile health crisis team is needed, or a road or rail supervisor can handle it, or a G4S. Very typical of any 911 dispatch center. When you call, you will ask the reporting party several questions to determine what type of response they need. Is it a medical response, fire response, or a law enforcement response?
Thank you. I would love to have a flow chart that I could see that would help me navigate my way through this. So that would be very helpful.
Wonderful. We'd be happy to work on that for you.
Director Simmons, you've had your hand up.
Yes, thank you. Director Way, I understand and I hear what you're saying, and I respect that that's your opinion at this particular time. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. It just means that I see the world differently from you with respect to this particular resolution. I see that it has been in the works for at least 5 months. It has we've all been briefed, had an extensive briefing as an education session on it. All of the parties involved in this particular resolution have been consulted, regardless of whether they had internet or they were impacted by the storm. To me, that's not relevant to whether or not we should move forward with this. The fact that there are fail-safe ways to evaluate and determine any point along the contract as to whether it's working, needs to be modified or terminated. And also with respect to the safety and security of our employees, as well as all of the people on the system. And I think the only way we can learn if what we're putting into place from the reimagining of safety and security is to actually launch this and evaluate it along with all of the other elements of reimagining. And so to me, I'm ready to support this today, even in light of your reservations. But I wanted you to know, I hear what your reservations are. It's just that I don't share them.
Kathy, do I see your hand up again?
Yes, I just want to respond to that. no, I think, so where I'm coming from with this is not that I am defiant around a better community model around how we tackle safety and security. So that to me, I think is something that over the last couple of months, Marla and team has been, working hard on with the reimagining safety conversation. So I am not against that. What I am proposing is that we just table this to the next March board meeting so that we have community input, we have more testimonies, we have the public to really look at this resolution and make comments. And in particular for me in Clackamas County, because 105,000 people were out of power and there are still recovering efforts. There are students that are still lining up to receive hot meals in parking lots. I just feel like on behalf of someone who represents Clackamas County that I would love it if we can consider this vote being delayed to next month. And I think that we would still have time to meet with the March 31st, 2021 contract, the sunset deadline that Marla just outlined. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like putting this 4 weeks out just so that people can get back in their homes, people can have stable internet, reimagine safety community members can talk to us directly about their experience and how they feel about these IGA agreements. I just feel like that is basically just what I'm proposing and asking board members to consider, is that we delay this vote to next month.
Marla, did you have a response?
Yeah, Director Way, if I may, it's my understanding that we need to allocate the fundings for us to be able to negotiate into the contracts for the other partners and subsidiary agreements. If we wait until the next board meeting in March, and that's why we have an urgency now, that does not give any of our partners time to get it onto their board agendas and dockets, because it does take a while to calendar. So the contracts will expire and we will be not having a police force. So we don't have that wiggle room, unfortunately, as much as I would like to say that we do. I would be happy to entertain an extension, but we don't have the mechanics to be able to do this. And it is unfortunate. I hear you about the winter storms. This has been a year of calamity. When, we were ready and poised to bring this to the board last year, and COVID hit, which delayed that process. And then George Floyd hit, which delayed that process. And now when we're finally getting out, reimagined public safety delayed the process. So as much as I would love to be flexible and extend, I don't have the mechanics, and maybe the general manager or legal can say that there's other mechanics. But I think I've exhausted every method so far.
Thank you, Marla. And I guess as a board, why can't we call a special meeting? That's 1 week from now.
So let's get to, I think we're going to get to your issue. Director Gonzalez, do you have another question or comment?
No, it was actually, Marla just addressed it. I was trying to figure out if indeed that existed. I was under the impression that we needed to give time for other agencies to essentially receive our decision and then respond to it. That was my impression. So it sounds like we don't have that wiggle room. And I guess while I have the floor, I'll add that I do see the unfortunate nature of having to make these decisions in the most uncertain of times, but I also understand that we did have IGAs in place previously. We did have IGA partners that decided in no uncertain terms that this was not something they wanted to continue. And we had this open question looming as a board. I'm not at all surprised the question has come before us today. I was kind of curious how we would be transitioning from that previous model into whatever we would be doing on the heels of reimagining public safety. Even though I wasn't in part of the reimagining public safety process as a board member officially, I was happy to be able to participate as a citizen and through surveys and opportunities to have input. Other than that, I feel like this is something we knew was coming and has to be addressed at a time when we're fully aware that operator safety is important. We know that getting the feeling that when you get on a train or a bus, that you're in good hands, not just to get you there on time, but to keep you safe along the way. I know how critical that is, and so I don't feel like it's a wise thing to create a break from that. And I'm not hearing that there's a contingency plan if we were to have a break from an IGA contract. I understand that these are especially critical times for operators to feel safe. And so I'm a little perplexed as to why the operator safety wouldn't be more important here in a time when I know that we're trying to address policing in a new way. But that's like basic for me. And I'm not sure why we wouldn't side with operator safety on this and ensure that we could have a graceful transition into a new partnership that understands reimagining public safety and is happy to be part of that process. Something our previous partnership did not have space or interest in, I'm afraid to admit. So I'm grateful that at least we've arrived to this point. And I see that we don't have wiggle room. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Bruce, this is Linda. I think it's time that we call the question and have a vote on this.
Okay, so I think we need to
I have one. I need to just ask a question.
Go ahead, Director Edwards.
Is this a road that that if we make a decision today to go down, there is no alterations to it or turning back? That is my concern and question.
Director Edwards, at any time, this is just actually putting funds aside so that we can develop the intergovernmental agreements, which will have the details on it. And there will be opportunities to change out those details in the intergovernmental agreements as what the community needs are. So this is just kind of saying we're setting aside these funds and approving us to go and to the negotiations with those agreements. Did I say that correctly, General Manager?
That is correct. And I think as you've also articulated, underneath these umbrella agreements, these other different municipality agreements, i.e. Gresham or the other participants, there are, if the program is not working, there are exit alternatives, as Marla has indicated earlier, to get out of the agreements if they're not working. So this is not a 7 years, it's over. It's a 5-year primary, 2-year options to renew. And then within the 5-year primary contract, there are exit alternatives for non-performance.
So I'm going
to, if I may, Mr. Chairman, so if we have compelling reasons to alter the agreement next month or next week, and we want to alter those intergovernmental agreements, then we have that that flexibility. Is that correct?
Doug, I'll defer to you on that.
Well, I think, oh, sorry, go ahead, Eric. Eric's our legal counsel here, so.
Yeah, I mean, I would say once the agreements are executed, then they're final. And so this authorizes us to enter into the agreements, and then the next step would be executing the agreements.
What kind of time frame are we talking about?
We are wanting to execute those agreements before the end of the March 31st, so their contracts do not sunset.
Okay. So in other words, in that period of time, if there are, like I said, compelling reasons, then we can certainly make sure that that information is shared. So if we do need to alter the agreements, we can. Am I correct in that? Or is that in the
if I maybe let me try. Once you execute the agreements, to Eric's comment, those are the agreements. Within the agreement, so up until the agreements are signed, the contents of it are part of a discussion, negotiation to get to that finality. So yes, they can be adapted if there's something that's untoward or not reasonable. So until the parties execute them, they're still in play. Once they've signed the agreements, those are the agreements. Within the agreements, there are the capabilities for exits, if you will, for non-performance.
So those agreements will be signed at what is our drop dead date for signing the agreement?
The current extensions with the contracts sunset on March 31st. We will need to sign new agreements before those contracts sunset. Otherwise, the officers aren't permitted, yes, legally, and Eric can answer this, to be working for us because there is no contract.
Marla, this is Linda. It's my understanding that the reason we want to do this today is also there is some staffing up that the sheriff's office and potentially other agents need to do to be able to actually operationalize the agreements as well as authorize the funds. Am I correct?
Yeah, it's authorizing the funds so that we can enter into the IGA negotiations and agreements with all of our parties. And so they can approve those agreements before their current contract sunsets and expires.
Right.
And that's why it's prudent to do it now, because we just don't have, it's going to take time to be able to send those contracts back and forth and to make sure that we have the appropriate language in those contracts. And that's why we need the month of March to be able to do that.
Bruce, I think we've had enough discussion, at least to find out if we're going to move forward or not. I mean, it's been an hour. And
I'm with you. I think what we need to do, though, out of deference to Director Way, is what she's asking for is a delay until the March meeting. The only way that can occur is if she wants to make a motion and it's seconded, and then we vote on that. So, Director Way, would you like to make a motion to delay this action?
Bruce, I think you have a motion on the table already, if I recall.
You already have a motion.
We already have a motion, but she's asking for a motion to delay, which I believe, help me out on this, General Counsel. It feels like we need to.
Well, Director Simmons called the question. She called the question on this resolution, and that was seconded. So there was a motion and a second. So now you need to vote on this resolution, 2102-07. So that is going to be what happens now. So that's the next step. You need to call the vote.
So the only way that we can make this clear, the only way we can delay this action, if we want to, would be for everybody who wants to delay it. If it's a majority, would be to vote against this resolution.
That is correct.
Then we can see if there's a motion to extend it for another month.
There you go.
Okay, I think I've got it straight. Everybody with me on this now?
And I just have a clarifying question. So we as a board can call a special meeting, correct? I mean, we as a board, in our job description, we have the authority to call a special meeting. We have the authority to review certain contracts and contract language. I just want to make that specific, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Great.
Okay. So based on what we're discussing, I'm going to call the question on. There's a motion to approve resolution 21-02-07. We've had a considerable amount of discussion, and I guess I just want to weigh in here. Say first off, thank you to Sheriff Reese for taking the time to be with us today. I have a lot of respect for him and what he's done with the Sheriff's Department, and we look forward to a partnership. So I'm ready to move forward on this. So all those in favor of the motion to approve resolution 21-02-07, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed?
No.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Whoops. Was there another no? All those not in favor of the motion, I heard Director Way, and is there another director? I'm not hearing any. So the motion is approved.
Director
and
Edwards' mic seems to be doing something.
There's somebody talking in the background. I missed something. Okay, so I have a resolution. I believe it is 5-1. So the motion is approved. Resolution 2021 is approved. All right, let's move on to
Mr. Chairman.
resolution.
Time for discussion?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
Given the concerns of Director Way, what will it take to call a special meeting if necessary in the next week or two?
And you're asking for a special meeting to be called for what purpose?
If there's if Director Way has compelling reasons why she would like to call a meeting, because her constituents in her district have some strong concerns that we should hear going forward, that maybe should be incorporated into the agreement, then I think that we should have that would compel us to meet and have that discussion. My question is, what would it take for that to happen?
I think this is where general counsel comes in, but I believe she could make a request to have a special meeting. It would be to me, and then ultimately we would have the board decide whether we want to have a special meeting or not.
That's correct. And another option, if in fact Director Way ends up having some testimony from some of her constituents in Clackamas County or in her sub-district that she would like the board and or staff to consider, she can always forward that on. You don't need a special meeting, but that can be taken into consideration as the agreements are being negotiated. So that's another option.
Thank you, General Counsel. So I guess, and thank you, Director Edwards, for bringing up that point. So I would like to have a special session begin because of the extraneous circumstances that the winter storm has impacted to my district, for all of the reasons that I had just mentioned before: power outages, internet issues, students in particular in various school districts that are really still struggling. And I feel like I would like, as the director that represents the Clackamas County region, I would like to call a special session so that we can not only hear those voices who may have wanted to participate today but couldn't, but also invite other community members and folks in particular who were involved in the Reimagining Safety project to be a part of it. So do we need to vote on that today for a special session, or is that something that,
well,
I guess,
what I'm hearing you say is you'd like to have a special meeting to reconsider the action we just took based on and allow further information. So I think we ought to have if you want to make a motion to have a special meeting, please make that, and we'll see if we have a second and see if people want to do it.
Great. I make a motion to have a special board meeting prior to March 31st, 2021, to listen to community members around resolution 21-0207.
I second that motion.
Well, I need clarification. Would this be people commenting on it, or would the board consider revoking this resolution?
I believe what she's asking for is a special meeting to hear additional testimony for the purpose of reconsidering our action on resolution 20-02-07.
And a point of clarification here, that, correct me if I'm wrong, is that a public forum or a special meeting, and does it matter?
Well, if we're going to actually take action to revoke action we've already taken or reverse it, we would need to meet in a formal board session.
And that would be a special meeting, which would not be a public forum. But I'm trying to figure. I mean, it wouldn't include the public comment session so that we can discuss this. I'm not clear on what we're signing up here, or what Commissioner Y. I'm not clear on whether you're asking for a discussion or a listening session, or if we do both, or what's happening.
I think President Warner just stated exactly what I was asking for.
Well, what I'm trying to understand as a board member is we've just voted 5-1 to approve a resolution. And when there is a dissenting board member who wants to revoke that by considering additional information, it just doesn't make sense to me to do that. I mean, let's move forward with this and get that community input as we go into implementing this resolution. And I mean, this is just illogical to me.
Excuse me, I am just not going to be bullied by another board member who's going to tell me what I should do, what I should say, and not do by the power invested in me by the governor of Oregon to sit on this board.
Okay,
What
I don't have a gavel, so I'm not going
to. Is that I have constituents who were impacted by the weather, who would have loved to have more time in coming to the board and stating their concerns, expressing their opinions. And as someone who represents that region, I am just requesting that we hold an additional meeting before March 31st to allow my constituents to come before the board of directors to hear their concerns on this particular resolution.
Okay. So I have a motion from Director Way that would call for a special meeting before the end of next month to reconsider or the action on resolution 210207 with an opportunity for a public forum or public testimony to inform that decision. So is there a second to that motion?
I seconded the motion, Mr. Chairman, earlier. But I also wanted to comment on the motion and my reason for seconding the motion, because I certainly understand Director Way's issue. If my constituents were not able to give testimony or on the issue that's going to impact them, especially a major issue such as this is going to impact them, I would certainly be very concerned and not able to support that particular issue because I haven't heard from my constituents and they haven't had an opportunity to give testimony. So I think that's the issue here. I don't think it's so much of changing our decision as much as it is to be able to hear their concerns and their issues so that we can incorporate those into our thoughts in regards to these agreements that we're going to be signing on to. There may be some issues that come up that we haven't thought of, that we have not experienced, and those issues need to be addressed and brought to our attention so that we can address them as a body. And I think that that's important. I don't like it when we start getting into debate becomes personal. That's not what we're about here. We're about working together to make sure that we're working to the good of the whole. But we can't discourage or and I don't want to use the wrong words here, but we certainly can't diminish the importance of one district over the others by saying that since my district was able to give testimony and be heard, and because of for whatever reason, inclement weather or whatever the case may be, that another district was not able to give their input, then certainly I don't think, like I say, and Marla stated this earlier, there have been many challenges to getting this done. And, we've had challenges along the way. We've had COVID, we've had George Floyd, we've had inclement weather. There's been so many different things, and and these are very volatile times. I get that, but at the same time, if 30 days makes a whole difference in the world, then after we've been going through this for a year, then I have to really look back and think, what are we trying to do here, and what is this really about? And so I think we need to strongly consider this amendment or this motion and consider it accordingly. And my best judgment is always when I look and say, well, what if that was me? And when I look at things from that point of view, I think, well, I wouldn't want that to happen to me. I would want folks to consider that if I was in their shoes, then maybe my thoughts would be different.
Keith, I agree with you, but I don't know that we need a board session for that. It could be a listening session.
So I want to dispose of the motion here. What I'm hearing, again, Director Way is asking is we need to have a special meeting to receive testimony and with the purposes of reconsidering our action on resolution 21-02-07. And my comments would be, we will have a regular meeting in March where the public can appear before us and make testimony. And based on that testimony, the board can then at that time determine if they want to reconsider this action, if there's people who make that testimony. So I'm going to vote no on this because I don't actually think it's a necessary action to do. So that's where I am, and I'm ready to call a question unless others want to comment.
I have a clarification on the motion. I'm not sure if it's baked in already or not, but the request I heard from Director Y was to have the listening session for the district that Director Y represents. And I know that there have been outages experienced throughout the region. My suggestion would be if it's baked in, that we open it up to all districts to be able to take advantage of the listening session. But I'm not sure if that's something that's embedded in the if it needs to be modifying the motion, or if it's something that can be adapted after we make this motion.
I did not hear limitations in the motion, Director Gunn, that limited to just Clackamas County. I think she made that reference to that, but I think we want to open the public forum to anyone who would want to comment on this.
My question then would be, Director Y, would you be comfortable with having the opportunity for other districts to be able to participate?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you.
With that, I'm going to call a question. All those in favor of the motion to have a special board meeting for the purposes of public testimony regarding this particular topic and reconsideration of resolution 21-02-07, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, I think Director Edwards was on mute, but or President Warner, can we do a roll call?
I was on mute. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. So you want me? So all those in favor of the motion, what I heard is Director Way, Director Gonzalez, and I didn't hear you, Director Edwards. Are you in favor of this motion?
Yes, I am.
All right. All those opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Lori, did I hear from you?
Yes, I voted no.
All right.
Motion.
So what I have is a tie, which that means the motion is not passed. So we need to, I'm going to move forward to the next resolution under our agenda here, item number 4. All right, the next resolution is a resolution 21-02-04, which is appointing an interim general manager. And I think I should probably take this agenda item since it's put under my purview what you want me to do. And I think as we heard earlier today, General Manager Doug Kelsey will be retiring as of March 5th, 2021. Because of that, and we know it's going to take several months to actually make a decision to hire a new permanent general manager. An appointment of an interim general manager is required and will ensure the continuation of our regular operation as a board and as an agency. And we're pleased that we have somebody internally who can handle this position in an interim way. And that's Sam Dessou Jr., who is our current Chief Operating Officer. And I think in the board package, you can see that he has about 10 years of military experience in charge of a helicopter crew, and has another 27 years of experience in public transit, both in Kansas City area Transit Authority, where he served as the interim general manager for a couple of years, and as the deputy chief executive officer for a couple of years. And since February, he has, as I said, been our chief operating officer. So I think is the ideal candidate to move us through for the next few months while we engage in our search to hire a permanent general manager. The resolution that's before you, I want to make it clear, has three components. The first of them is that effective on March 5th, 2021, he will be appointed as the TriMet's interim general manager and shall serve until the board appoints a replacement general manager. The second thing is that you're going to authorize me as the board president to negotiate and execute on the board's behalf a contract with Sam DeSue for the general manager, interim general manager for a period up to 180 days. And then finally, I'm going to ask that Sam DeSue work with me and the full board to look at performance expectations that were drafted by Mr. Kelsey before he announced his retirement. And let's focus on some of the key items there that are important to the board, since we know he will not have time to do all of them, but there's a number of them I think we want to make sure are moved forward. So that's the action, and that's the resolution. Is there any questions? I'm hearing none. Is there a motion to approve resolution number 21-02-04?
Motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, then all in favor of the motion to approve resolution number 21-02-04 signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right, let's move on to the next resolution, which is resolution 21-02-05, which is approving the 2023 biennium special transportation fund and formula state transportation improvement fund formula and disbursement of federal section 5310 funds for senior and persons with disability, and authorizing agreements with transportation providers. There's a lot of information in our packets, but Mr. General Manager, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Board President, members of the board. This fund goes to a wide range transportation service. It includes TriMet's Lyft, Wilson's Smart Services, Ride Connection, and also a number of small city transit agencies and community organizations that provide really important and critical services to seniors and people with disabilities. This also goes towards our vision that we've shared around becoming the first place in the United States that's 100% transit accessible to everybody. TriMet's responsibility is to really take applications in this process from the providers, evaluate them, and then develop a disbursement plan under the advisement of the Special Transportation Advisory Formula Committee. For 22 and 23, or the biennium, the total amount of STA funding is available is $8.6 million. The STF funds available is $2 million within that. And the total amount for federal section 5310 funding is just under 7.5 million. So our role here is we are really a pass-through agency for the funds. If you recall, the HB 2017 Transit Advisory Committee also advises TriMet and to allocate $1 million of STIF funds each year for these total services. Additionally, the fund Lyft, these funds go to services that would otherwise have been would have to be met by Lyft themselves, so at our own funding program. So they provide a substantial improvement overall for our services for seniors and people with disabilities. And your approval, Mr. Board President, and members of the board, is recommended here. If there are technical questions, we also have Tom Mills and I think Cora Potter, who I see on right now. Cora, I missed anything or anything that you wanted to cover?
There's just one technical thing with the flow through of the funding. The legislature's in the process of deciding how to combine some STIF funding with the Special Transportation Fund. And so about $1.8 million of the 8.6 million that's indicated in STF is actually STIF funding. It's baked into that $8.6 million amount. So the total amount of STIF that's actually being distributed is around $3.8 million this budget.
Thank you. Other questions by the board for staff or the general manager? I'm hearing none. Is there then a motion to approve resolution number 21-02-5?
So moved.
I have a motion by Director Gonzalez and a second by Director Simmons. Was that correct?
Correct.
All right. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve resolution number 21-02-05, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to resolution 21-02-06, which is declaring certain real property as necessary for construction and operation of the Better Red Light Rail project. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Board President. This also authorized the general manager to make offers to purchase the property or acquire through, I think it's come before the board before eminent domain, if it's needed. In this case, as you know, what we call the Better Red project will extend the red line to Fairplex and Hillsborough Max Station to help ease some of the crowding that we consistently saw on the blue line, again, in a pre-COVID world. This also includes extra new rail cars, and it is also underpinned with our commitment to speeding the system up. That's where the steel bridge upgrades fit into this, double tracking to the airport, and altering some of the rail layout at Gateway to accommodate this. This is also projected to ultimately increase ridership, and again, in addition to speeding the system up. It improves also our reliability on the entire MAX system, again, by adding double tracking from Gateway to the Portland International Airport. Most people may not be aware of this, but when we build the rail line schedule up, literally we're only as good as the train in front of you, which probably makes a lot of sense. And the slowest point that's held us back for many, many years here is actually the single track between the airport and Gateway. This project, in fact, helps liberate that, and therefore liberate and speed up the whole system by a few minutes. In this case, there are only 10 properties owners that will be impacted by, and of those, 6 are state and local governments that support the project, and they're also well aware and understanding of the potential impacts. In terms of, for context overall, though, we do know that TriMet does not expect to acquire entire properties on any of these takeouts. We'd be seeking property for construction purposes or expansion of the public right-of-way only. And these purchases are necessary, and they're also all included in the Better Red Line budget. So with that, your approval is recommended, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Are there questions by the board? I'm seeing that it's a fairly straightforward project.
Yeah.
And for those who haven't been around before, TriMet has done a wonderful job of keeping us out of eminent domain and needing to go to court on these things. So I have the same expectation if we approve this. So there's our motion to approve resolution number 21-02-06.
So moved.
Second.
There's a second. There's a motion and second. I think that was Director Gonzalez and then Director Edwards.
Yep.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, then I'll call the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve resolution number 21-02-06, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, then the motion is approved unanimously. All right, then the final resolution we have is resolution 21-02-08. which is authorizing a contract modification with David Evans and Associates, Inc. for specialized staff augmentation services. Mr. General Manager.
Thank you very much, Mr. Board President. So this is a temporary staffing firm that helps us with project and construction management, as well as executive assistance for engineering in the engineering construction division. Staff have been providing assistant construction manager and office engineer project controls specifically for our Powell Garage project. So they're well immersed into the complexity of this Midway project, and they're vital members to this project team. For several reasons, because David and Evans have been used for more work than initially anticipated. The request before you today is for additional funds for them to stay in their positions and help with provide their expertise, particularly with that Powell, the Powell Garage project as it continues. The funds are also needed here, instead of coming back with you with supplemental resolutions on this, this is intended as one resolution, to help with upcoming rail and other miscellaneous projects, things like the red line that was just talked about in the previous resolution. David and Evans, their workforce is 33% women and just under 17% minorities. And their goal is actually to subcontract about 10% of the work to certified firms specifically for the work. This resolution before you modifies the contract to increase the authority from $1 million to $1.762 million. And these funds are included in the fiscal 21 operating budget for the engineering construction division. So with that, happy to answer any question, and your approval is recommended.
Is there questions by the board? Director Edwards, were you raising your hand?
Yeah, I was trying to. Thank you. Yeah, my question is, how much are we extending this contract, or are we extending the contract, given that it's 3/4 of the initial contract that we're increasing it?
Yeah, Steve, are you online, Steve?
Yes, Doug.
You want me to take that?
Board President, Director Edwards. These were actually a suite of contracts that were procured competitively, and so if your question is about the order of magnitude for this particular increase, I will let you know this is not sort of a sole source or directed towards one contractor necessarily. There were a suite of contracts that were competitively bid, and a number of contracts were awarded. It just happens, and this is a small town, David Evans, over the course of a couple of years, has actually acquired talent from other firms. And I'll say that 70% of this work is actually to support our track rehabilitation project. And we have 3 shutdowns that we want to cover this calendar year. And so, Director Edwards, what's happened is that the talent within the city has kind of been consolidated by this one firm. And they possess the talent of some very specialized track construction expertise that we just bring in on an as-needed basis. So I hope that addresses this situation for you.
Yeah, yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Other questions? I'm not seeing anybody's hand raised. If there's no further questions, is there a motion to approve resolution 21-02-08?
So moved.
Okay, I think we had a couple competing folks. Director Edwards have made a motion.
Yes.
And
second?
Linda second.
Okay, great. Is there any further discussion on this resolution? Hearing none, I'll move on to the question. All those in favor of the motion to approve resolution number 21-02-08, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion is approved unanimously. All right, I believe that covers all of the resolutions, unless I missed one. But before we go to the ordinance, I just wanted to encourage Director Wade, make it clear that even though we're not having a special meeting called specifically to deal with the resolution on the transit police services, please encourage your participants to come to our meeting and provide input. And because I would like to hear from them. And if after that, if we hear from that, the board wants to make further actions, they can. But so please encourage you and your constituents, and I would put the same out to all the other board members. All right. Moving on then, the next thing on our agenda is the ordinance number 362. I'm going to ask our general counsel to read that ordinance by title only.
Thank you, Mr. Board President. Ordinance number 362 of the Tri-County Metropolitan Transportation District of Oregon, retroactively adopting April 2020 and August 2020 service changes and updating route designations. This is the second reading.
Thank you very much. In looking at the resolution, I'll remind the board that we did have a public hearing on this at our last meeting, the first reading, and I don't believe we received any comments at that time. And so per the first kind of paragraph of the of this ordinance, it says that the board, having reviewed, considered, and approved the Title VI Service Equity Analysis Report, goes on to take action on this ordinance. So I just want to make sure that we have, the board is feeling comfortable and has reviewed, considered, and approved the Title VI Equity Service Analysis before we actually take motion on approving this ordinance. Any comments on that?
I just want to be clear on where we're at with this and what areas that are being covered by these proposed changes.
Well, maybe we could ask staff to go through. So I think there's an entire list in our packet, Director Edwards, that outlines where the changes were made. And these are all changes that were made as a result of COVID and the reductions in ridership. Mr. General Manager, staff, can you answer Director Edwards' question?
Yeah, I'm just trying to see if I can get, is Tom Mills on by chance?
I am on. Can you hear
There
me?
he is. I thought he was there. Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
Did Director Edwards have a specific area of questioning? I just want to make sure.
Yeah, the fifth.
I know we did a presentation on the first one, so that's fun.
The 5th district.
So this is, real quickly, this is not in reference to any proposals. This is in reference to the changes that were made back in April of 2020, where we cut service, reduced service by 20% due to the COVID crisis. And then in August of 2020, we then added 10 percentage points of service back. So now we are at a 10% service reduction. And so it's not in reference to the FY22 proposal, which is we have out to the public today, and we will be bringing to the board for the first reading in March. This is for what we have going on today.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to be sure.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Good question. And the question I have maybe for Tom and Doug is, I think it was Jim Howell who provided testimony today. I think he was talking about the upcoming proposals, right?
That is correct.
That's correct.
That is, we'll be talking about that. We'll be having a first reading on that in next month.
All right, good. And I did forward the email from Jim Howell to all the board members, so you can see his comments, and they'll be ready for that when it comes. So again, everybody's comfortable with the Title VI Service Equity Analysis? Then do we need to make a motion to approve ordinance of this General Counsel?
Yes.
So is there a motion to approve ordinance number 362?
So moved. Linda.
Is there a second? Second by Director Edwards. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I will ask General Counsel to do a roll call vote on the motion.
Thank you. We'll start with Director Bauman.
Aye.
Director Edwards.
Aye.
Director Gonzalez.
Aye.
Director Simmons.
Aye.
Director Way.
Aye.
And Director Warner.
Aye.
Ordinance 362, the motion passes unanimously.
Right. I think that's all of the items that I see on our business. there anything else staff or the board needs to come to our consideration today?
None at this time.
All right. Hearing nothing from the board, therefore I will adjourn the meeting. We do have a briefing agenda on, Mr. General Manager. That's something you want to continue off with, or should we look to defer that to April?
I have, well, yeah, I would, I've spoken to JC Vanat on it, and I think in light of the time we are at now, I would suggest we defer this until the March board meeting. It's an exciting thing to see, but I think due to the time we're at now, I would suggest defer.
Right. I think that's wise. Now we'll point out the information. I think you had a PowerPoint in the packets. That,
correct.
Get a handle on it so we're ready when it comes back to us. Okay.
And Bruce, I'll mention, this has been deferred now twice. So if it is deferred to March, I'd really like to see it because I think it's really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
It really is very cool. It's, yeah, very impressive.
Maybe we can put that right up front in the general manager's report next time.
Or
let's do that. Okay.
Yes.
All right. With that, I guess I would just note for anybody listening, our next board of directors meetings is March 24th, 2021 at 9 a.m. And I see that we have the Tax Supervising and Conservation Commission budget meeting already scheduled for April 28th, 2021 at 8 a.m. And then our April 28th is the next for the April meeting of the board of directors. So get those on your calendar. All right, I'm going to declare victory and